100% of Splatoon Raiders was torture. What started as a phenomenal and genuinely fun game with a good chunk of side content slowly turned into a repetitive recycled piece of garbage with so many RNG elements that it basically became a gambling simulator. But hey, I did it all. Every single relic, with their combined value reaching into billions. The entire Salmonid Research collection, every Briny Scroll, every gadget part, every weapon variant, every outfit, and as the cherry on top, I somehow spent over 60 euros in pieces of plastic just for that true 100% completion. We got sexually harassed by squids, some of which I did not mind, by the way, experienced Groundhog Day, and most importantly, turns all of this suffering into a beautiful video for you to enjoy. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy. The band Deep Cut, consisting out of Fry, Shiver, and Big Man, were traveling towards the sunken islands, which had recently resurfaced thanks to the technical tonics. Shiver was extremely confident that they would find some incredible loot there, especially after spotting a strange glow in the distance that they assumed was coming from one of the islands. They crash-landed on the island, and Fry immediately rushed over to check whether the pilot was okay. I guess that means we were the pilot, which then led directly into the title card. They almost got the font right. 1 month later, Fry, Big Man, and Shiver were looking for the mechanic, who was indeed the pilot, and before throwing us straight into the character creation screen, we would first choose a voice. Now, I cannot speak squid, but I could still hear the absolutely beautifulness of their voices, so I went with the second option. Fry then casually cut her hair, allowing us to choose a new hairstyle. The character creator was pretty bare bones, but I've never been all too interested in character creation anyway. We could also apply some eyebrows, choose a skin tone, decide whether we wanted freckles, and give ourselves some beautiful Arctic blue eyes that stare directly into your soul like you should have already liked and subscribed. And that was about it. This was the man who was going to 100% all of Splatoon Raiders. It had now been 31 days since the crash landing, and Fry already clearly did not have her priorities straight, considering she had spent her time building launches and arcades. Big Man stepped in and reminded everyone that there was no time for games. They needed to escape this island and return to Splatsville. Although it looks like our Big Man was already starting to lose his mind a little. Fry then glazed our character for a moment, explaining that we could build absolutely anything from ships to cranes, whatever it might be. We could apparently build it. Plan A was to create the hideout ship, although I think that plan had already been completed, considering we were literally standing on it. To begin working on the next upgrades, we need to collect materials. Shiver teased us a little by explaining that we could collect those materials because, after all, that was apparently what we are supposed to do, because we are a mechanic and a raider. And they are here. Big Man handed us a walkie-talkie so the Deep Cut could stay in contact with us, and with that, we were already heading out on our first expedition. We jumped straight into action with Deep Cut talking our way through on the radio, while the game gave us a quick tutorial on how everything worked. And for anyone who does not know exactly how Splatoon works, Inklings cannot swim in normal water. They will die. Ink, however, is their specialty. We could blast ink across the environment and then swim directly through it, allowing us to move much faster while collecting the mysterious shards scattered throughout the area. Inklings could also squeeze through small grates, while enemy-colored ink had to be neutralized because it dramatically slowed us down. In the distance, we spotted our first Salmonid. These Salmonids are the main enemies of the game. We completely beamed the first few down, although these were probably the smallest and weakest Salmonids we were ever going to encounter. I also passed through several squid rings that rewarded us with some extra shards. Not many, but shards are shards. We then surfed across the water on a small board until we reached the other side, where an absolute chunky Salmonid was waiting for us. Let's see whether we can already take it down. Shiver informed us that that thing was technically considered a boss, although that would be an extremely early boss fight, don't you think? Oh, let's have a go at it. The creature could take a decent amount of damage, but it was incredibly slow. After unloading enough ink into it, the salty tongue finally went down, dropping us a brand new weapon. Or well, not exactly a brand new weapon, it was more like an upgraded or perhaps a heavily modified version of the weapon we were already holding. Continuing further across the islands, we spotted some kind of rusty old machine. We wanted to bring it back with us, but because we obviously could not carry the entire thing ourselves, Deep Cut stepped in to help. And boom, we brought the giant tin can back to base. Big Man immediately started preparing to break it down for materials, although Shiver strongly disagreed. She looked at the machine like it might actually be some kind of vehicle. And hey, do you know who might be able to fix it? Yeah, either Bob the Builder or indeed us the mechanic. Big Man seemed to doubt her capabilities, or maybe Bob's. But come on, man, I know you're big and all, but just like Shiver said, we would never know until we tried. Well, it was not exactly new, but it looked like we managed to patch the thing up in basically no time. Shiver looked smug as hell about being right and excitedly asked who wanted to take it out for a test drive, although I had a feeling it was not completely operational just yet. Before finding out, we checked our gear. This menu displayed all of the new weapons we had discovered during our raids, which in our case included the Flamingo Splattershot Jr. It dealt 7 more points of damage than our current weapon and was optimized for both range and ink coverage, so it was a pretty decent early upgrade. We also received a notification explaining an extremely useful feature that, as a completionist, I absolutely loved. Whenever we missed a weapon or material that appeared during our raids, it would automatically be collected for us afterwards. This will not completely solve the RNG problems later, but we will discuss that. At least it meant I could not accidentally leave behind a random collectible that had already dropped during a raid. But of course, there's one important catch. The item still needed to become visible during the raid. If it remained hidden inside a container or inside of an enemy, then the game had no idea it existed, and we would receive absolutely nothing. I was also completely wrong about the repaired machine. It was not just some vehicle. We could drive around the island. This little bot was actually how we would travel towards entirely new islands. It had its own built-in radar that displayed the Spiralite Islands map, and it had already detected what appeared to be a treasure chest over at Peel Coast. So we were prepared for a first proper raid against level 2 Salmonids, although there was still one small issue. How exactly were we supposed to get the bot over there? Just because we knew where the island was did not mean we could suddenly teleport across the ocean. Luckily, Fry had an idea. She wanted Big Man to climb inside the machine while we stood on top of it. Well, I guess that crane was actually worth it. Being launched across the ocean was awesome and everything, but how were they exactly planning on getting us back? Ah, well, we had Salmonids to eliminate. There was no time to question whether we would ever see the base again. Big Man had already located the treasure using the bot's radar, giving us a clear direction to follow. Now, it was not only useful during combat either. Big Man could actually help us reach higher areas because we could perform small bot hops. We could even command him to stand in a very precise location, which became useful when collecting squid rings that required slightly more accuracy. Not long afterwards, we spotted a large crystal formation. Big Man was able to drill directly through it using the machine, rewarding us with massive chunks of mysterious shards. While making our way towards the treasure, we encountered some more Salmonids. This time, we dealt with them using Big Man's ultimate ability, the Showstopper. This ability allowed us to ride on top of him while firing an enormous amount of ink directly at our enemies. I sure hope Shiver and Fry would eventually receive their own little ultimates. We then discovered another crystal to drill through. As far as I understood, these formations would only continue getting larger as we progressed further into the game. But what could we actually do with all these crystals? Well, hopefully something incredible, because we had already discovered an absolutely enormous one. But of course, it was being guarded by a handful of Salmonids. Big Man, step away for a second, man. A little bit of distance is okay, pal. Once the Salmonids had been taken down, we drilled through the giant crystal. It rewarded us with another pile of countless of mysterious shards, alongside something much more exciting though. It's treasure, baby. A real, actual treasure chest. Fry and Shiver were both thrilled that the bot's treasure raider had worked. But just as they began celebrating, their signal suddenly started cutting out. The radio went completely silent. we could no longer reach them. We needed to hurry back to the hideouts. Big Man was absolutely devastated because while Deep Cut had come up with a phenomenal plan for getting us onto the island, yeah, they had forgotten to create any kind of plan of getting us back. Or had they? The rest of the gang had casually arrived with a collection of enormous sea monsters that could transport both our treasure and ourselves back to the hideout. That bloody beast managed to carry an entire treasure chest alongside what had to be several 100 pounds of rusted metal. Impressive little creatures. Shiver then decided to formally introduce herself after we had already been stranded together for an entire month. Sure, whatever. She explained that she was a shark tamer from the Hohoiro clan. Yeah, whatever. Make something up. Meaning her family had the ability to control sharks. Fry came from a long line of the Onaga eel tamers and commanded the entire crew of yellow eels that we had just seen. Big Man, however, did not tame shit, but he could dance. Deep Cut then started flexing their careers as television and radio stars while referencing their Splatoon 3 adventures. Listen, you might be famous and everything, but right now, you are stranded in the middle of nowhere, my friendly Inklings. Let's just not get ahead of ourselves. They were completely shocked that we had never heard of them, and I mean, really shocked. They practically began drowning in sorrow over the idea that someone had somehow failed to recognize their celebrity status. Although maybe being famous was not that useful when you just crash landed on a deserted island, but sure. And had to build a hideout ship just to not die. 'Cause you can't swim. Shiver eventually received a much needed reality check and remembered that we had just discovered an actual treasure chest. Yeah, we forgot about that, didn't we? She immediately questioned why we had not opened it yet. I was beginning to wonder the exact same thing, lady. So we cracked that bad boy open and discovered 3 new whatever the hell these things were. Ah, wait, no. They're ink tanks, although they were much more complicated than the regular tank we had been wearing. Each tank offered its own unique playstyle and allowed us to equip completely different types of gadgets. First, we had the speed tank, which allowed us to use gadgets focused on moving quickly, attacking rapidly, and evading Salmonid attacks. Basically, the nimble machine. Then we had the power tank, which allowed us to overpower enemies and fight entire swarms of Salmonids head on. Finally, there was the tactical tank, which allowed us to equip gadgets that provided some kind of strategic advantage. Well, I am a brain-dead human being. More power, more muscle. Luckily, we could still swap between the different tanks later if we ever changed our minds. Our starting power tank gadget was an enormous axe that launched us forwards, before performing a satisfying 180-degree swing. We also had our bot buddies, each providing a different ultimate ability, so yeah, we can choose a different ultimate. Or well, they're called showstoppers, so obviously I immediately wanted Shiver's version, because of the giant shark. What else? With the treasure secured, our bot detected another chest over at the Blanche Seaway, where the Salmonids had already reached level 3. We were still only level 1. I'm not afraid of anything. So we were once again loaded into the crane and flung directly towards Blanche Seaway. During the raids, we encountered several new Salmonids for our research collection, including the flying Spinooks and the Salivator, an airborne vulture-like Salmonid. We also encountered our first tongue chums, which were basically more dangerous long-range versions of the regular chums. Eventually, we discovered several strange circular launch pads that launched us through the air like a bot jump, without actually requiring the bot. By combining one of these launches with a proper bot jump, we reached a small semi-secret area containing a whopping 44 mysterious shards. We could then use the small plants scattered around the level to cover even more ground. At one point, the Salmonids had grouped together like an entire Call of Duty Zombies train, so I activated Shiver's showstopper and completely deleted every single enemy in sight. I knew choosing her would be an excellent decision. Sharkwise. There we go, baby. Our next piece of treasure. Completing the raid also increased us to level 2, raising our health by 3 points and our damage by an absolutely massive 30%. We received another strange mechanic token alongside a brand new Briny Scroll containing important information about Spiralite Islands. There were also several unusual parts inside the chest that looked like they could be attached to something. Big Man was far more interested in the illustrations on the Briny Scroll. According to the scroll, both the giant crystals and the smaller mysterious shards were actually made from something called spiralite. Hey, so not so mysterious anymore now, are they? Deep Cut had absolutely no idea what the spiralite could be used for, so they asked whether they had any ideas. Using the parts we had discovered, we could finally begin tinkering with our gadgets. For example, we could attach splash damage up, increasing our overall damage output by 3%. Each gadget could hold up to 9 parts, although every part also consumed a certain number of points. The vertical slash part only occupied 1 physical slot, but it consumed 4 of the gadget's 10 available points. Maybe we would be able to upgrade that limit later. I sure do hope so, because I doubt there will be any good 1 point parts. We'll figure it out. After equipping both vertical slash and splash damage up, we immediately noticed our difference in our axe. It now had slightly less range, but dealt considerably more damage. But enough dawdling. It was time to test our upgraded gadgets against some real targets. There was one final treasure signal remaining on Erp Islands, the same island chain we had been raiding throughout the entire opening section. The Salmonids here had reached level 4. Ha! We were far stronger than these ugly mugs. The entire island was covered in a thick layer of mist. Although this was not natural fog, several strange machines were pumping it up from somewhere underground, which most likely meant that both the source of the fog and the treasure were hidden beneath us. Luckily, Shiver had already dug up a tunnel leading down towards the first sublevel. So we began with a terrifying timer. We only had 180 seconds. And in these 180 seconds, we had to collect a total of 1,000 power eggs. Now that sounded like an awful lot, but we managed to gather them surprisingly quickly. But on sublevel 2, we encountered something much more concerning. The thick-cut salty tongue, the biggest salty tongue of all the salty tongues. This chunky bastard was standing directly between us and the treasure. Once we eliminated it without too much of a struggle, we not only obtained the chest, but also shut down all of the machinery producing the unnatural fog. With the mist finally cleared, an entirely new section of the Spiralite Islands was revealed. Before investigating that though, we discovered a two-fisted Salmonid containing a new gadget that could be equipped across all 3 of our tanks. Or well, it's not exactly a gadget. It's a relic. There was still plenty of strange fog covering the rest of the map, which explains why the island chain had originally looked so small. Apparently, all of it was coming from the Salmonid ruins. We also finally learned the real reason Deep Cut was searching for treasure, and surprisingly, it had nothing to do with greed. Splatsville was drowning in debt. Well, I'll be damned. Financial problems in a Nintendo game. Big Man was delighted because he believed clearing the fog meant they could finally return home to Splatsville. Fry simply responded with why. Shiver once again began teasing the absolute living crap out of everyone. Seriously, stop it, it's a kid's game. Big Man was completely confused. Shiver's shark and Fry's eels could easily carry everyone back home. So why were they still staying on the islands? Because there was more treasure to find. Duh. Deep Cut could only return home once we had completely stripped out the Spiralite Islands bare. Every last piece. They asked whether we were joining them, although Big Man clearly had no say in the matter. And technically, neither did we because we can't talk. But Shiver and Fry saw our awkward silence as an enthusiastic yes. The previous raid rewarded us with the explosive steps gadget for a splatchet, causing an explosion whenever we charged forwards. The treasure itself did not contain another gadget. Instead, it granted us a relic power that allowed us to perform a small additional jump while already in mid-air. With that unlocked, I visited the mechanic's shack, a brand new area where we could begin constructing upgrades for the hideout ship. Eventually, these facilities would unlock gadget development and weapon upgrading. Unfortunately, the materials required for those upgrades were still completely unknown. Upgrading the hideout ship itself was also impossible until every ship facility had been constructed. We could begin improving the test range, but that sounded like a complete waste of materials this early on. Instead, we constructed the tank upgrading facility. hell yeah, look at that beautiful workbench. We can now spend the skill point we had earned earlier to upgrade our tanks. Our choices included increasing our health, weapon damage, gadget damage, or unlocking 2 additional gadget part slots. All of those upgrades were very tempting, but I chose weapon damage because it was easily the most useful improvement overall. And anyone who watched my Another Crab's Treasure video already knows that I do not waste points on health. I would rather kill something quickly than die slowly. With our new facility complete, another large portion of the map was revealed. We now had 2 possible destinations. The first was another treasure chest located at the Tomato Rocks. The second was some kind of legendary looking crystal hidden inside Plain Den. However, level 8 salmonids were lurking around that crystal, so like any intelligent human being, I decided to visit Tomato Rocks first, steal some more treasure, and hopefully reach level 3 in the process. During this raid, we encountered several new salmonids. The scrapper carried a giant metal faceplate that completely blocked attacks from the front, meaning we could only splat it by getting behind the thing. We also met the stinger. These creatures were made from a massive stack of pots and pans and could fire an insanely powerful laser beam across the entire battlefield. So yeah, even through walls, by the way. These things had to be eliminated ASAP. I was moving through the raid pretty darn quickly, but speedrunning these areas was honestly a terrible idea. Even the most basic wooden crates could contain extremely valuable rewards. I literally discovered a brand new scroll and weapon inside some of the most pathetic looking boxes imaginable. This game was not simply about finding the main treasure and immediately leaving. Actually exploring the environments could reward you massively. Reaching some of those hidden locations could still be dangerous though. Miscalculating a single jump could send us straight into the ocean, costing us one of our limited lives for that raid. Luckily, completing the mission restored all of our limited lives. We also returned with a massive pile of useful equipment. The relics we had collected increased our overall loot value, and the more valuable our collection became, the grander our treasure hunting title became. We now earned the title of a junior survivalist, increasing the number of mysterious shards we received by 10%. We had also discovered several new weapons, including a charger that dealt 306 damage, and a completely new brush. It also came equipped with the Ink Pro effect, reducing its ink consumption by 10%. Because we had also discovered a separate relic providing the exact same bonus, we could now reduce our ink consumption by a total of 20%. Ha! Well, don't mind if I do. After retinkering our splat shit, it became painfully obvious that we needed to increase its capacity. 10 points were nowhere near enough, now that we were discovering much rarer parts. Even so, I still spent our newest skill point on another weapon damage upgrade. We could also operate the crane and use it to fish random boxes out of the ocean. The first one rewarded us with 2 shards. Yeah. That was not really worth the effort. With that disappointment out of the way, I guess it was time to continue raiding. We had discovered a compass pointing towards Lintel Inlet, an area that did not appear to contain any treasure. Deep Gut still wanted to test whether the compass actually worked. So yeah, sure, why not? I assumed we would only find a bunch of crystals here, maybe a few weapons or gadget parts if we were lucky, but probably just crystals. To drill into the giant formation, we first needed to collect 2,000 power eggs. While gathering them, we encountered our first steelheads. These chunky, heavy, armored salmonids charged enormous bombs above their heads, before launching them across the battlefield, covering a huge area in enemy ink. I do not like these guys. They did reward us with a large number of power eggs though, so at least they were useful for something. We continued drilling smaller crystals while eliminating salmonids, but I seriously doubted we could discover any gadgets or weapons during a raid like this. Was I terribly wrong. Those completely ordinary wooden crates continued dropping weapons, scrolls, and almost anything else that could be possibly useful. They looked worthless, but somehow contained some of the best loot in the game. After reaching the required 2,000 power eggs, we could immediately drill into the main crystal. However, continuing to collect eggs would increase our final shard multiplier. Naturally, I needed to discover how high that multiplier could go. It reached a 2x, baby. I was expecting a 1.5, but I had secretly hoped for double rewards. Once we collected 4,000 power eggs, the multiplier could no longer increase. Meaning, it was finally time to drill into that chunky crystal and receive twice the payouts. During the entire 11-minute raid, we collected around 300 shards directly from the island, alongside 4 weapons and 5 new gadget parts. 3 duplicate parts were automatically scrapped, which was pretty useful. Yeah. A really nice feature. By the end of the raid, we had earned a total of 1289 shards. That was more than we had owned before starting the mission. We had also discovered the Scrapper's glass window, which finally allowed us to construct the gadget development facility aboard the hideout ship. Before checking it out, I upgraded our weapon damage one more time and it was technically maxed out, as maxed as the game currently allowed. We needed to spend another 6 skill points on different upgrades before we could continue improving weapon damage. The gadget workshop allowed us to develop completely new gadgets, which was awesome because it opened up entirely new ways to play the game. The one that excited me the most was the Splatolites. It was basically like a kill aura, a bloody ring of death. So naturally I developed it immediately and equipped it alongside our Splatshit. We could not tinker with the Splatlights just yet because they required an entirely different set of parts. But having both gadgets equipped was already a major improvement. I also equipped the new level 4 oil blaster. It was a slow firing semi-automatic weapon that felt almost like a small shotgun. During our previous raid, we had discovered another compass. This one pointed towards Choda Buried Ruins, where level 7 Salmonids were waiting for us. And because the word buried was literally in the name, we were once again traveling underground through several different sublevels. Apparently, these ruins could contain some incredible upgrades for our tanks. Our 2 gadgets also operated on completely separate cooldowns. That meant activating the Splatlights did not prevent us from immediately using the Splatshit afterwards. This could eventually create some ridiculous combinations. For now though, we were simply rocking and rolling with the 2 gadgets we had unlocked so far. The oil blaster was not bad, but it was not exactly delivering any insane dopamine hits either. The thing was slow as hell. Against the minced Scrapper waiting for us on the sub-level 3, it was incredibly effective. This boss could only be damaged from behind, just like a regular Scrapper, so after giving him several backshots, heavy backshots, I was confident that poor bastard would be sore in the morning. Feeding him rewarded us with the wind-up key relic, several sweet new gadget parts as well. Big Man had also discovered something strange and rusty. It appeared to be ancient, and Shiver believed it could lead us towards something much larger. She could only translate a few surviving sections of the text. Something about singing being the key, something about opening the way, and something else involving gold. Well, gold was probably the only words Deep Cut needed to hear. Big Man revealed that he had found the ancient object attached directly to our little bot. Therefore, whatever ancient location this thing was connected to also had to be connected to the bot. I spent our latest skill point increasing our gadget part capacity, although receiving only 2 additional slots, it's not exactly groundbreaking, but it was better than nothing. And then swapped back to the splatter shot because I was much more interested in firing quickly than slowly. We also equipped a new relic power called Finishing Burst, which gave every defeated Salmonid a 10% chance of triggering a small explosion. The raid we had just completed was also worth revisiting twice more. Using a different tank during the same mission could reward us with entirely different items, giving these raids some pretty cool replay value. For now, however, I continue towards another treasure hunt at the Carbonara wetlands. It was currently the easiest raid available to us, and more importantly, it was finally another proper treasure hunt. At Carbonara wetlands, we encountered the fish stick salmonids for the first time. These strange little idiots flew around in circles above a giant pillar while constantly spreading enemy ink across the area. Pretty funny, pretty stupid, and pretty goddamn annoying. But I also discovered a hidden path containing a massive collection of wooden crates. Unfortunately, after breaking every single one of them, the only valuable thing I found was another Briny Scroll. So nothing too exciting, although we do need them for the collectibles. We also eliminated our first steel eel before continuing through the raid and taking out the remaining salmonids, blocking our path towards the treasure. Just like almost every other mission so far, inside the chest, we discovered the curved trivet relic. It was worth absolutely jack shit. So yeah, that was not going to earn us our next treasure hunting title. I spent our latest skill points on another gadget part slot before developing the next available gadget, the spin wheel. Although I did not equip it, I was still extremely happy with the setup we were currently using. Our newly discovered compass had once again detected something rare. It was pointing towards another one of those raids that rewarded different loots depending on which tanks you used. However, I was much more interested in the sparkling diamond-like crystal hidden inside the Spiggity Den, where level 8 Salmonids were waiting for us. This underground mission was probably my favorite raid so far. It was also potentially one of the most useful. The entire area was absolutely packed with Salmonids, and I mean packed, because we would eventually need to complete the entire Salmonid Research collection. This looked like a perfect location to return to whenever I needed to grind to large numbers of a specific enemy. The slightly terrifying part was that this was another timed mission. We needed to reach the required power egg quota as quickly as possible. Luckily, I managed to pull it off and escaped with one of those strange diamond-like crystals, officially called a spiralite gem, a rare and extremely valuable crystal. This raid also rewarded us with several special materials, finally allowing us to construct the last remaining ship facility. Weapon upgrading. We could still not improve the hideout ship itself because the game wanted us to progress further through the main adventure. Fair enough, fair enough. Every weapon could be upgraded up to 5 levels beyond the level it originally dropped at. Upgrading only costs raw spiralite shards, and because our plastic bottle splatter shot had been carrying us through most of the game, I upgraded it from level 3 to level 6. That increased its damage by 11 points. I immediately took the upgraded weapon over to the plain den, another raid containing one of those valuable spiralite gems. We had been able to attempt this mission earlier, but I avoided it because the area was filled with level 8 salmonids. Now, however, they were no longer a problem. Surviving the raids was easy. Actually completing it, on the other hand, was the closest call we had experienced so far. This was yet another timed mission, but almost every enemy was tiny. Tiny basic salmonids reward us barely any power X. Reaching the required quota of 2500X was an absolutely ridiculous ask. But we did somehow pull it off at the very last moment. And hey, that was another spiralite gem for us, baby. Ooh, and we also leveled up during the raid, allowing me to increase our gadget capacity to 16 slots. While preparing for the next mission, I noticed something slightly strange. So far, almost every gadget part I had discovered was designed for the splat shit. The spin wheel had not been used yet, while the splat lights, which I had equipped for around 4 raids now, had only received 2 parts, and both of them were the exact same type. The RNG was already beginning to show itself. I then completed another treasure raid against level 9 salmonids. During the mission, we encountered the Salmonid Lich for the very first time. These enemies hovered above the battlefields before attempting to crush us whenever we moved underneath them. When they missed, the Lich slammed directly into the ground. That was basically our only opportunity to deal serious damage. The game was becoming pretty complicated. Pretty quickly as well, introducing new salmonids at a rapid pace. Thankfully for me, I had already sunk more than 100 hours into Splatoon 3, with a large portion of that time spent playing Salmon Run. So most of these enemies, well, felt familiar. The treasure chest rewarded us with a little menace relic, and unlike the curved trivet, this thing was actually worth a decent amount of money. Its value pushed us into our next treasure hunting title, Beachcomber. This increased our spiralite shard yield to 20%. However, the amount of treasure value required for the next title was suddenly almost 3 times larger than the previous requirement, so that is just wonderful, isn't it? I also discovered another plastic bottle splatter shot during the raid, and it was already 1 level higher than the weapon I had just spent almost all of my crystals upgrading. So here's the professional tip. Just like almost any other dungeon crawler ever, or looter shooter, do not waste too many resources upgrading your early equipment. You will probably discover something better approximately 1 raid later. At least I could put the stronger weapon to the test. Over to She's Den, where level 11 salmonids were guarding another rare spiralite gem. Once again, we were battling against the clock more than the salmonids themselves. Their higher level gave them considerably more health, but that was not the real problem. The problem was that most of the enemies were scrappers with giant armored faceplates. That meant we needed to attack them from behind. Giving back shots was not the issue. Giving back shots while racing against an extremely aggressive timer was stressful as hell. Luckily, the splat shit could slice directly through the metal grates, separating different sections of the area. This allowed me to quickly reach the scrappers from behind and eliminate them without wasting too much time. I honestly expected this to become our first filled raid. Instead, we cleared the entire den surprisingly easy and collected another spiralite gem. With that victory secured, I spent our newest skill point on gadget damage. I also began developing as many gadgets as possible, including ones belonging to tanks that I was not currently using, cause we would eventually need to use every tank. But for most gadgets, I was not even missing the required parts, I was missing the shards. Because my goofy ass had decided that upgrading one of our first weapons was an excellent financial decision. Well, at least I learned that lesson right at the beginning of the game instead of much later. The dungeon list also displayed every collectible we had missed during previous raids, so I began returning to older locations locations to collect everything that had been left behind, including compasses and Briny Scrolls. And do you want to know the coolest part about this? You could return to the hideout whenever you wanted. You did not have to re-enter an entire raid collecting one missing item, and then suffer through the tedious task of completing the whole bloody mission again. No, the moment you found what you needed, you could simply leave. That is the kind of accessibility feature that brings an unexplainable amount of happiness into my life. I did still fully complete the shard raid I was replaying because reaching the 2x multiplier rewarded us with a massive number of shards. This was also where I really started noticing the difference made by our additional 10% shard yield bonus. The previous giant crystal had rewarded us with around 300 shards. This time it gave us 365. That is more than 10%, but I'm not complaining. By the end of the raid, we had earned a total of 1491 shards from that mission alone. With our pockets slightly less empty, I traveled towards the next set of buried ruins. The Elf Radio ruins to be specific. This was another 3-floor mission that rewarded different loot depending on which tank we used. On the final sublevel, we forced to fight the Jumbo Big Shot. This dude was the first genuine threat we had encountered. It was also the first fight where I realized that completely ignoring the surrounding enemies would get me killed. Unfortunately, the boss fight was still timed, meaning there was not exactly much room for dawdling. I avoided wasting too much time on the smaller Salmonids and only cleared enough of them to create some breathing room whenever I needed to recover my health. After a slightly stressful battle, we defeated the Jumbo Big Shot and returned with the Ballroom Mask relic. And this thing was worth some serious moolah. Completing the ruins cleared away another section of the mist and revealed an area marked with 3 question marks. Well, the more question marks a location has, the more suspicious it becomes. Big Man warned us that island looked incredibly dangerous and suggested maybe we should just, not go there. But you can bet your sweet bottom there was some incredible treasure waiting on that island. If anyone was willing to take that risk, it was Fry and Shiver. Although technically, we were the person being placed in the actual danger, but okay. Shiver warned us to not become a traitor because gold could apparently do some very strange things to people. Meanwhile, Big Man casually revealed several adorable photographs from their time together in Splatsville that he had discovered while treasure hunting. Honestly, the fact that private photographs of them were scattered across these islands, that was actually my immediate concern. And thankfully, Fry agreed. Why the hell were there pictures of Deep Cut lying around the Spiralite Islands? Oh, wait, yeah. They've probably been thrown from the helicopter during the crash. That explains a lot. Fry and Big Man immediately began teasing Shiver over how cute it was that she had brought all of those pictures with her. Shiver, of course, became completely flustered. She was secretly caring and sentimental while hiding it behind a bratty attitude. Definitely not the first time somebody has created a character like that. Shiver decided to accompany us towards the mysterious island, and luckily, this was apparently not her first rodeo. Before heading out, I increased our gadget damage again. We now only needed 1 more skill point before removing the upgrade limiter, allowing us to continue increasing weapon damage and gadget part capacity. Unlike the previous ruins, this mysterious location only contained a single sublevel. However, that one sublevel was occupied by one enormous boss. The Wingbringer, known as the Flappatrizer. This thing was an absolute beast, and somehow we needed to skewer it. Now, we had already survived some pretty large battles, but this fella dealt an insane amount of damage, and oh my lord, it could also fly. Actually hitting it while flying was not the biggest problem. Shooting it while simultaneously avoiding the endless attacks flying directly toward us, yeah, was slightly more difficult. The jumping leaves scattered around the entire arena allowed us to launch ourselves towards the boss and get close enough to use our gadgets. Unfortunately, dealing more than 1,000 damage barely seemed to move my dude's health bar. What did deal some serious damage was the bot's drill. At a certain point, the Flappatrizer summoned waves of Salmonids into the arena. Once we defeated enough of them and collected 1200 power eggs, we could launch the bot directly into the boss. The drill caused him massive damage, and even better, it knocked him out. straight out of the sky and left helpless on the ground for around 15 to 20 seconds. That gave us the perfect opportunity to raise absolute hellfire on the fool. From there, I simply repeated the same process: avoid its attacks, eliminate the Salmonids, collect 1200 power attacks, and launch the drill. Beat the absolute life out of the dude. So really all I can say from here is that this fight did not have much of a consistent pattern. That does mean that every cycle played out in a slightly different and often completely unexpected way, which is cool. I like that. But at the end of the day, that dude was gone. The massive beast was finally skewered. A major relic emerged from the Flappertrizer's body. Shiver admitted that she was impressed, not only because we had managed to defeat the beast, but also because we had not immediately ran away with the treasure. I will give Shiver some credit though. Because of the bot drill, without her help, we would have been absolutely cooked during the fight. This relic also appeared to be the object mentioned in the ancient riddle, the thing we supposedly needed to sing to. Whatever the hell was that supposed to mean? It was probably the song referenced by the inscription. The bot began playing the exact same melody, causing everything to align. A constellation suddenly appeared across the planetarium above us, revealing a strange gleam in the distance. And naturally, the first thing that crossed Fry's mind was, loot! Although in all seriousness, the idea of a tower containing treasure at the very top did not sound ridiculous. If singing was the key to the goal, then we might have literally discovered the key, leading towards the riches. This could be one hell of a haul. The raids also rewarded us with the awkward letter opener relic. Despite its stupid name, the thing was worth so much money that it instantly pushed us into our next treasure hunting title, Loot Scavenger. We also discovered a level 12 soap bottle splatter shot, so yeah, count me in. Shiver thanked us again, and admitted that we were not nearly as useless as she had originally expected. Oh, how kind of you. At least we had finally earned her trust. Deep Gut suggested that everyone should rest before attempting to reach the enormous treasure tower. Fry also decided to use her brain for once and pointed out that clearing more of the fog might reveal a path leading towards it. Before returning to the raids, I purchased the final gadget damage upgrade required to remove the current limiter. This unlocked another tier of tank upgrades, including 4 additional gadget part slots and space for another relic power. The next limiter required 11 more upgrades. Luckily, we could increase weapon damage 4 times, gadget damage 4 times, and our gadget part capacity 3 times. That meant we could remove the next limiter without spending a single point on health. Although maybe completely ignoring health is not the smartest decision. Well, have I ever made a smart decision? Occasionally, maybe. We could also finally upgrade the hideout ship to level 2. After completing the construction, the entire hideout became significantly grander. This allowed us to build additional facilities, develop even more gadgets, and increase the size of our test range. 2 particularly useful facilities became available: part development and weapon scrapping. Weapon scrapping sounded especially helpful. I had no idea how many shards it would reward us with, but my inventory was already filled with crappy weapons, and any amount of spiralite was always welcome. Unfortunately, both facilities required materials that we haven't even discovered yet. Big Man did still reward us with 10,000 spiralite shards. Apparently that was our reward for developing 10 different gadgets. Well, thank you, Big Man. Unfortunately, because we were still missing the required construction materials, there was not so much we could actually spend those shards on, and there was absolutely no way I was wasting them upgrading another early game weapon. So, back to raiding, baby. Ooh, I'm loving this so far. Defeating the Flappertrizer, the flappy big boy bastard who was, pretty tough actually. He had revealed another enormous section of the map. This game introduced a new type of mission. Spicy raids. I had already heard that these could become one of the largest roadblocks towards earning 100%. At least when it actually came to difficulty. Because, well, we'll get into the RNG bits. They were essentially the same missions we had already completed, but spicy. You replayed an old raid on a much harder difficulty. And no, I do not mean shiver hot, I mean Salmonids turning into absolute demons hot. These missions rewarded us much better loot, but they were significantly harder and pretty much impossible for us at our current level, so they would provide plenty of cleanup once we had completed the main story. I want just a small warning, the bosses also had a spicy version, so yeah. During our next raids, we encountered the spring chum and the flyfish for the very first time. And with those fellas joining the battle, the raid was noticeably more difficult than the previous missions. I realized that in two different ways. First, the Salmonids were dealing considerably more damage. Second, the rewards had become significantly more valuable. The relic alone was worth 5.2k, and I discovered my first pieces of 3-star gear. I also decided to replace the splatlights with the spin wheel. The spin wheel had received a 3-star part that increased its explosion radius by 25%, and with the number of massive Salmonid groups we were beginning to encounter, that sounded incredibly useful. The compasses did not simply reveal collectibles, they worked like actual treasure maps. Once one activated, I had to slowly follow across the world map until it finally pointed towards a completely hidden location. I already knew the compasses were required for completion, but I had no idea they could uncover entire dungeons. The first one led us towards dashes of spices. The game just kept getting larger the more we played. The dungeon was basically a tutorial designed around one specific gadget, almost like a shrine from The Legend of Zelda. My question was, is every compass going to be another tutorial? Well, after completing it, we received a skill point, the same rewards we would normally earn from leveling up. So I immediately returned to the map and began searching for the next hidden location. That compass led us towards another sampler dungeon. So yeah, another tutorial. Although they were incredibly useful, because they forced me to experiment with gadgets belonging to other tanks. Gadgets I probably would have completely ignored otherwise. And some of them were actually pretty damn good. And because every completed dungeon rewarded us with another skill point, I was very glad they existed. I continued completing these hidden trials until only one compass remained, although that final one refused to reveal its destination. Altogether, the dungeons had rewarded us with 4 skill points. I spent 3 of them increasing our gadget part capacity, giving us 22 available slots. Before investing the final point into the weapon damage, a small warning before we jump into the next main story raid. While the compass dungeons rewarded the skill points, they provided almost no materials and barely any spiralite shards. You could collect around 47 shards scattered throughout the training areas, but that's about it. They still needed to be completed, but they were extremely time consuming for what they rewarded. Skill points were valuable, of course, but we were already earning them fairly consistently through normal level ups. Although, like I said, they did open my eyes to how useful some of the other gadgets could become. We would just need to find better parts for them first. During the next raid, I was splatted twice. For the first time in the entire game, I actually failed the raid. The spin wheel was also pretty terrible for this particular raid. I did not switch it out though, because I was confident that I now understood what needed to be done. Normally, this would be the moment where I started complaining that the mission was impossible or unfair. But first of all, these were level 16 Salmonids, and we probably just should not have attempted the raid anyway. Even so, on our next attempt, I managed to beat it with only 4 seconds remaining. The trick was learning how to use the level's layout properly. You see, the battle arenas were designed incredibly well around each dense main enemy types. Here, we needed to attack several annoying steel wheels from behind, and the environment gave us plenty of routes to circle around them and deliver those back shots. I loved how naturally the map supported the objective. We also had completed every raid so far alongside Shiver. And as we have, she told us that she was happy to be joining us on this journey and could not wait to see what the future held. Our bonds with Shiver increased, rewarding us with another Briny Scroll. Apparently the game had even more completion systems waiting for us. We would need to strengthen our relationships with each member of Deep Cut to unlock all these Briny Scrolls, and maybe even something secret at the end. For now, I decided to keep Shiver equipped because she still had 2 more surprises waiting for us. With that done, I moved on towards several spicy raids. The first one was based on one of the earliest missions in the game, although the literal opening raid did not have a spicy version. The missions still use the exact same basic layout, but it replaced the original enemies with much stronger Salmonids that dealt significantly more damage. Although this one was only Salmonid level 14, and we have already survived worse. The rewards were also considerably better, and completing a raid on Spicy difficulty granted a unique bonus item. I then attempted another Spicy raid that immediately jumped to level 17. We already had missions available at level 22 and 24, but attempting those would have been an actual death wish. Level 17, however, might still have been possible. This was also one of the runes that rewarded different items depending on which tank you used. Completing all 3 sub-levels and defeating the final boss would reward us with 5,000 Spiralite shards. Yeah, you heard me correctly, 5,000. The only question was whether we could actually bring that massive reward home. And we sure could. And we sure did. I activated Shiver's Showstopper during the final boss fight, completely devouring a massive portion of its health bar in one attack. After that, I absolutely slaughtered the thing, because we already knew exactly how the boss worked. With the raid completed, we secured all 5,000 Spiralite shards. Our tank had also absorbed enough Power X to become ready for an upgrade, so we transformed it into the Superpower tank. Whenever we emerged from swim form after remaining submerged in the ink for a short period of time, all of our damage increased by 20% for a limited time. Now that, right there, is what you call an upgrade. I also changed the loadout and equipped a 3-star paint roller. The weapon attacked surprisingly quickly and dealt 675 damage. To be fair, we also had a 70% weapon damage bonus from the skill upgrades, but still, that was some serious damage. Unfortunately, the roller was not quite enough to clear the spicy version of the plain den. And I mean, just barely, we were very close. So naturally, I gave it one more attempt. The paint roller consumed a ridiculous amount of ink, meaning I consistently and constantly needed to stop and recharge. The funny part was that every time I submerged myself to recover that ink, our superpowered tank activated and made us considerably stronger. The two mechanics worked perfectly together. We tore through the Salmonids, collected the Power X, and raced towards the required quota. Then, the timer expired. We were exactly 24 Power X short. 24 out of the required 2,800, oh my lord. I guess spicy level 18 Salmonids will have to wait a little longer. I was probably better off continuing the main story for now. The next raid took us through another 3 sub-levels before facing Longline, the Steel Eel, on the final floor. And as you may or may not know, I hate Steel Eels. As a boss fight, however, this one was excellent. And do you want to know why? Well, if you look at the health bar above us, you can see that thing died incredibly quickly. And no, that was not because we were over-leveled or properly prepared for the mission, not even close. These were level 17 Salmonids. I'm just too good at the game. After taking down Longline, we obtained the Spiralite's Bow Relic, which added another 6.5k to our total treasure value. That was enough to earn us a brand new title. We were now officially a treasure hunter. Completing the raid should have cleared away even more of the fog. Shiver also advised us to keep our equipment updated because the Salmonids were becoming stronger and stronger. Well, Miss, I am very much aware that they're becoming stronger. The bot had also begun making strange rattling noises. After inspecting it, we discovered what appeared to be some kind of spatula stuck inside the machine. Fry immediately sensed something familiar about its design, and it displayed the emblem of her family, the Onaga clan crest. She had heard rumors that Salmonids had stolen one of these crests a very, very long time ago. If an object stolen generations ago had somehow ended up in the Spiralite Islands, then the Salmonids responsible for attacking Splatsville all those years ago must have originally came from here. Apparently those Salmonids owed us quite a bundle. With interest. They had been causing damage to Splatsville for generations, which might also explain why the city was drowning in so much debt. The fog had indeed cleared, revealing several new missions. One of the available raids was crawling with level 19 Salmonids. Luckily, Yaksubi Volcano was only level 17 Salmonids. Something we can actually handle. This was one of the longest levels we had explored so far. That might have been because I insisted on searching every corner for maximum loot and attempting to find every collectible in a single run. But even without that, it was still fairly large. The raids also introduced the Moss Salmonid. This creature traveled underneath the ground before suddenly launching itself upwards to swallow us whole. It could only be properly damaged whenever it attacked, meaning we had to bait it into striking before unloading everything we had. The next relic we discovered combined with the one we already collected, creating a complete, or at least more complete version of the item. This increased its total value by another 6.9 million, that's an absolute insanity. Unfortunately, the requirements for our next title had also become completely insanity. We now needed to reach a treasure value of 164 million. That was more than 4 times the amount we currently own. I guess we needed to keep raiding. I returned to Faraday Island, an area we had already completed during the main story. There was still another mission available at Tather Rocks though. It was one of those crystal collectathons where we gathered power eggs to increase our shard multiplier. The Salmonids were only level 16, so the raid itself was not a problem. And I did not bother grinding towards the 2 times multiplier, because I already discovered almost every collectible, and for some reason, barely any Salmonids were respawning. This was completely different from the previous crystal farming raids. Maybe the mission was glitched, maybe this particular map was simply less generous, I could not tell you. What I could tell you was that our part development facility was finally open for business. Developing an individual part was not particularly expensive, but there were so many different gadgets and upgrades available that creating everything would still cost us an enormous amount of resources. Before spending too much, I completed a quick spicy run on the first crystal collectathon map, Lintel Inlet. A map we're still gonna see a lot. During this raid, I encountered a golden salmonid for the very first time. His name is Goldie, and the thing took an extremely long time to eliminate. But once it finally went down, it dropped more than 600 Spiralite shards. That is an insane amount. I also completed the entire race with the 2 times multiplier because unlike Tather Rocks, this map was still absolutely filled with respawning Salmonids. That's why we're going to be playing it a lot later on. And we were now only 1 skill point away from removing the next upgrade limiter. For the very first time in the entire game, I also switched away from the power tank and equipped the speed tank. Not because I particularly wanted to, but because I was forced to, because I wanted to quickly revisit the 3 buried ruins we had unlocked so far and complete each one using every tank. That would permanently remove them from our completion checklist, while also rewarding us with the experience we desperately need. Our raider level was currently too low for the next group of the main story raids. Technically, I can attempt them, but I'll probably beat them through enough trial and error, and that would just be incredibly stupid. Because from there, if I do eventually beat them, the difficulty would only continue rising, and eventually I would run directly into a wall. So deciding on completing some content that would need to be completed anyway because it's a 100% video, for some additional experience in the process, it's brilliant. Although here's the problem. I barely owned any useful parts for the other tanks, starting with the speed tank. Although, the thing actually felt surprisingly powerful. Although, that might have been because the first 3 raids I completed contained level 7 and level 10. Yeah, pretty weak Salmonids. Only the final buried ruin was the one that provided anything close to a challenge. Still, the speed tank might have been much better than I originally gave it credit for. I would not personally describe the speed tank runs as much of a challenge. However, I now understood why every buried ruin needed to be completed separately with each tank. Obviously, it was required to finish the dungeon menu, but each tank also rewarded completely different relics and exclusive gadget parts that could only be obtained from those specific ruins. Now, that was honestly pretty neat, and an original way to add replay value to the levels we had already completed. They really cooked with this system. After finishing all 3 ruins with both the speed and tactical tanks, I could confidently say that the tactical suited my playstyle far better. The speed tank was fun, but it focused heavily on fight or flight playstyle. The tactical tank, on the other hand, had a turret, and that thing was really good. The turret only dealt around 127 base damage, but its raw damage was not what made it so powerful. First of all, it had a cooldown of 9 seconds, while remaining active for around 11 seconds. That meant there was a brief period where we could have 2 turrets deployed at the same time. More importantly, we could basically keep at least 1 turret active throughout an entire fight, consistently. So far, the Salmonids did not appear to attack or destroy it, so with the correct parts, we could probably increase its damage, reduce the cooldown, or extend how long it remained active. But the absolute best thing about the turret was its positioning. It could fire directly at the backs of enemies that normally needed to be attacked from behind. For example, we could throw it behind the shield-plated Salmonid and allow the turret to eliminate the thing without us needing to circle around it ourselves. It could also act as defensive tools. During boss fights, while we focused all of our attention on the boss, the turret could handle the smaller Salmonids surrounding us. It was so bloody useful that I would definitely begin switching between tactical and power tanks from this point onwards. And in case you were wondering whether fully completing a buried ruin with all 3 tanks granted some kind of special rewards, no. Besides all of the individual relics and parts earned from the 3 runs. No, there were no special additional rewards for completing the entire set. Before finishing the final rune, Shiver reached her 2nd bond level with us that rewarded us another Briny Scroll. My guess was that each member of the Deep Cut would reward 3 Briny Scrolls in total, meaning we only needed to continue traveling with Shiver for a little longer before eventually switching to somebody else. After earning that bond rewards, I upgraded our gadget damage again. This finally removed the current upgrade limiter, allowing us to continue increasing our gadget part capacity. We also unlocked another relic power slot. The next limiter required us to upgrade a total of 20 upgrades, so only 19 more to go. We could still unlock 3 additional gadget part upgrades, 5 gadget damage upgrades, and 5 weapon damage upgrades. That added up to 13, meaning 6 of our skill points were now forced to go into health. Honestly, I think that's fine. Maybe increasing our HP slightly was not a horrible idea, even though we were already receiving a decent amount of additional health every time we leveled up. Completing all of those repeated raids had also earned us a huge amount of experience. So I traveled towards the Gajosa Buried Ruins, the next tank-specific mission. The Salmonids here were level 20. But they should have not been much of a struggle anymore. I mean, I had Loki become slightly over-leveled. Using the tactical tank, I would not exactly say that I breezed through the sub-levels, but I still completed them without too much difficulty. Once again, the timer was the real demon. During the raids, I also defeated the Drizzler. These creatures could drop Drizzler masks, one of the special materials required to construct the weapon scrapping facility. So discovering one of those gave me another reason to finish this mission successfully. We pushed through the final sub-level and returned with the blue fragment relic, which was worth almost 24,000. That probably meant the power and speed tank versions of this raid would also reward extremely valuable relics. Big Man commented on how strange all of the objects were we had been discovering. And yeah, they were pretty weird, but they also granted us magical powers, so maybe we should not question them too much. While we had been busy fighting for our lives, the rest of Deep Cut discovered another strange note inside the ruins. The illustration appeared to show some kind of high-ranking Salmonids being worshipped by several lower-class followers. Big Man explained that the text described an ancient Salmonid civilization that had existed in this area a very, very long time ago, and apparently they possessed incredibly advanced technology. Fry was convinced there had to be more to this story. Shiver agreed and mentioned something about the map being sent to somebody. Apparently they had discovered the same map inside Big Man's house, meaning it most likely belonged to one of his friends or family members. But who could that possibly be? Before figuring that out, I equipped the speed tank and returned to Gajosa Buried Ruins to finish the entire set. The map was still fresh in my mind, so I might as well complete it now. Unfortunately, I could not beat the boss with the speed tank. As I said earlier, this thing is horrible, and I mean really bad. I did not even manage to reduce the boss below half health. Maybe calling the entire tank horrible was slightly dramatic because it was still usable, but compared to the power in the tactical tanks, yeah, no, it was pretty damn bad. Strangely enough, I also failed my first attempt with the power tank. That made me realize just how overpowered the tactical tank turret had been during this fight. The boss's weak spot was extremely difficult to hit, but the turret automatically targeted every single time. Without that assistance, I needed to become slightly more creative. Instead of using another roller or brush, I switched back to a more direct weapon, the level 17 Flamingo Splatter Shot. It took a while to adjust to normal firing again, but at least it gave me a realistic chance of consistently hitting the boss's weak spot. My biggest question was, why is this thing so ridiculously difficult in the first place? Even with precise aim and constant fire directed towards its weak spot, I just barely failed another speed tank attempt. I had now spent around 35 minutes on this single raid. Eventually though, we finally defeated it. The speed tank version rewarded us with a relic worth 25,000. During the raid, I had also discovered a Water Wing Splattershot Junior that was 5 levels higher than our current weapon. We jumped from level 17 to level 22. It was a 3-star weapon and its damage increased from 192 to 249. That was an improvement of 57 damage. Because we had already completed the speed tank run, I brought this much stronger weapon into the power tank version, and well, you guessed it, I defeated the boss on my first attempt. That rewarded us with another relic worth 26,000, so yeah, the grind was worth it. Unfortunately, we still needed another 73,000 in the treasure value before earning our next title. Using the Drizzler masks we had collected, I was finally able to construct the weapon scrapping facility. We could still not upgrade the hideout ship to level 3 because the game required us to progress further through the adventure. At the new facility, Fry could, well, fry our weapons. Scrapping weapons did not reward an enormous number of shards. Because I was constantly replacing my equipment with stronger drops anyway, I decided not to begin destroying everything immediately. I would save the scrapping for whenever I desperately needed some more shards. Or until another good reason presented itself. For now, we continued clearing missions that were actually required for the main story, beginning with the Soju Cliffs. While keeping my eyes open for collectibles, the thing that continued surprising me was how little repetition I felt. The game was fundamentally asking us to repeat the same basic concept over and over again. Enter an island, fight salmonids, collect loot and find treasure, and then leave. Yet, the constant stream of new weapons, gadgets, parts, enemies and objectives made almost every raid feel slightly different. That continued to really impress me. The main story missions were beginning to feel considerably easier than the optional raids. Although once we reached their spicy versions, I seriously doubted I would continue saying the same thing. The relic we discovered here was only worth around 5.1k, that's nothing incredible, but honestly every bit of treasure value was always welcome. I continued clearing the remaining areas so that they could finally be crossed off our completion list. The regular story mission progressed surprisingly quickly, although we still needed to complete plenty of optional raids to obtain specific materials and enough experience to continue. I finished the 4 remaining dens, each rewarding us another spare light gem. The final one was quite interesting though. Instead of collecting a large power egg quota, we were placed into a race against time and needed to reach and eliminate one specific enemy. The enemy was a stinger, meaning it could constantly fire at us from the opposite side of the level, while we desperately attempted to reach it. It was probably the most creative den we had completed so far, a really cool idea that genuinely caught me by surprise. After finishing those missions, we unlocked another brand new shard hunting raid at the Crepe Lava Lake. The Salmonids were only level 18, so basically baby mode. I was absolutely swimming in spare light shards despite not actually really needing them at this exact moment, but hey, they're always welcome. Near the end of the raids, we encountered another golden Salmonid. Because I had already activated the 2x reward multiplier, the bastard dropped more than 1200 spare light shards. By the time the raid was completed, we had earned a total of 3,985 shards. So basically 4,000. That was an enormous payout and another reason why scrapping weapons did not seem particularly interesting at the moment. Of course, it would be extremely overpowered if unwanted weapons rewarded even more than they currently did. Our power tank was also technically maxed out. But not literally maxed out though, because before we could actually max it out, we were required to collect a total of 30,000 power eggs while using the speed tank. So the game is now completely forcing me to use a crappy tank. Well, sure, what the hell. I continued casually progressing through the Juven crater, the next main story mission, and at this point, I had become slightly overleveled for most of these raids. Once we reached the center of the crater, that cheap and pathetic relic worth only 100 that we had discovered earlier finally became useful. It combines with another piece to create the Eclipse shields, which was worth 20 million. That's an increase of 19,999,900 in value. Oh, I like numbers. Even with that enormous discovery, we were still around 48 million short of our next title. However, completing the mission revealed another triple question mark location on the map. That probably meant we were about to encounter another major boss. Maybe we would even reach the treasure tower, or at the very least, discover another clue leading towards the Tower of Riches. But let me not get ahead of myself. Big Man had also discovered 2 additional notes relating to the mysterious maps, some of which appear to be more than 100 years old. The original map had supposedly been destroyed by water damage. That meant the map, the bottle shown in the notes, had to be a copy that somebody had carefully recreated on a brand new sheet. Apparently, someone had discovered the map after a storm beside a weakened shark that had washed ashore. This revelation seemed to hurt Shiver slightly. After all, she was supposed to be a master shark tamer. The message's sender had become lost and never made it back home. Yeah, that's right, that dude is probably dead. With Fry somehow declaring herself as the winner of a game of rock, paper, scissors that nobody else had even participated in, she would be accompanying us through the Stovenoven Temple. I guess Shiver was still slightly shaken by what had happened to the shark. This boss was significantly easier than the flying bozo. The creature constantly spun in circles around the arena, but unlike the Flappatrizer, it did not have one tiny weak spot that we needed to hit. We could simply fire directly into its body at almost any given moment. Eventually, just like the previous boss, it summoned several waves of Salmonids. This section was slightly more difficult because the giant eel continued circling the arena, dramatically reducing the amount of space we had available to fight in. However, that also made the objective much faster. Because everything was packed into such a small area, we could collect the large power eggs far more quickly. By focusing exclusively on the Salmonids that dropped the biggest eggs, this phase was barely a struggle. Once we had collected enough, Fry launched a drill directly into the boss. We also activated a showstopper, causing an enormous swarm of eels to rain down from the sky and completely obliterate everything caught underneath them. It was an excellent ultimate for both heavy damage and crowd control. After only 2 waves of Salmonids, the oversized idiot was already completely outmatched, although it might be worth mentioning that we were also slightly overleveled. Did the mechanic just get sexually harassed by Fry? I do not think I want to know what happens behind the scenes around here. Once again, we discovered another strange object that apparently wanted us to sing. So yeah, that happened again. After that display of absolute beauty, I once again had no idea what any of it meant. Another constellation appeared above us though, but what exactly was it showing? The center of the spiral could have represented the treasure tower, but what were all of the Salmonids surrounding it doing? Shiver might be correct here. On the day Deep Cut flew towards the Spearlight Islands, they had spotted a mysterious glow from the helicopter. Maybe that light had been coming from the treasure tower. Wow, that's actually... Hey, that could make a lot of sense. Big Man just took the exact words out of my mouth and then claimed them as his own. Everything was beginning to align. The golden treasure tower had been located directly in the center of the Spearlight Islands. The relic we discovered during the raid combines with the awkward letter opener, increasing its value by another 108 million. That's outstanding! Of course, that number instantly promoted us to the next treasure hunting title, Seasoned Explorer. Unfortunately, the following title required another 190 million in treasure value. So, very exciting. Shiver was relieved that we had survived, although she was obviously not worried whatsoever. Fry also began glazing us over how cool, talented, muscular, powerful, and generally incredible we are. She did not say all of that in exact detail, but I knew what she wanted to say. To reach the center of the island chain, we simply needed to continue clearing the remaining fog, nothing more, and definitely nothing less. We could also finally upgrade the hideout chip to level 3, so naturally, we did exactly that. This unlocks even more gadgets, gadget parts, and the test range equipment. However, no additional ship facilities became available, and it appeared that level 3 was the maximum hideout ship level. I then constructed every single piece of test range equipment, and I mean every single one. Every platform, every training object, every arcade machine, all of it, fully constructed and completely maxed out. The arcade games were also surprisingly expensive. Half of my Spearlight shards simply disappeared into equipment that I would probably never use again. But hey, at least the test range was now 100% complete. And I like that percentage. I also developed the final remaining gadgets for both the speed and the power tanks, and afterwards I scrapped several unwanted weapons to obtain another 5,000 shards, allowing us to complete every tactical tank gadget as well. For accomplishing that, our main man Big Man rewarded us with 2 Spearlight gems. Honestly, this was one of the first moments where I could have preferred shards. But sure, thank you Big Man. We now had collected all 15 out of 15 gadgets, another badge completed. For a small progress update, we had currently discovered 28 out of the 120 weapons. Our Salmonid Research was 31.5% complete, which is not too shabby. We had obtained 20 out of the 56 Briny Scrolls. And there were still plenty of relics remaining, although most of those were connected to the main story and optional missions that we need to complete anyway. As we of course defeated the boss, it also revealed an entirely new region, a frozen, snow-covered section of the Spiritlight Islands. Our first destination was Vanilla Mountain, where level 24 Salmonids were waiting for us. This raid introduced the tongue Kowak, and yes, we were still discovering completely new Salmonids. But I can already hear you asking, doesn't that make sense? You're only 31% through the research. And yeah, I understand what you mean. But Salmonid Research did not end after simply discovering an enemy. Every species required us to eliminate a specific number of them, with some of them demanding 30,000 kills. So throughout the entire adventure, my largest concern was slowly becoming the Salmonid Research grind. The raids also rewarded us with the Mishap and Tile relic. It was worth a pathetic 333. Although by now we already knew it would probably combine with another piece sooner or later. I quickly completed the Salch Vents raids as well, since it was another mission required for the main story. This was where I started to become slightly annoyed by the game forcing me to use the speed tank, simply because I already maxed out the power tank. Maxing these tanks took an incredibly long time, so yeah, that was going to become one phenomenal post-game grind. I can already feel it, and I can also know now that I was completely wrong. The coolest reward from this raid was not the new relic piece, which combined with the acrobatic thing to increase its value by another 44 million. No. How awesome it still was. We finally powered up the power tank again, transforming it into the Ultra Power Tank. This unlocked an entirely new gadget slot. Yes, you are hearing me correctly. A whole new bloody gadget slot. The Ultra version also meant that the power tank was completely maxed out. Unfortunately, that additional gadget slot would probably never be used unless we still had Salmonids left to research after maxing out both the speed and tactical tanks, which I seriously doubted, or well, I certainly hope not. Maxing the power tank alone had taken slightly less than 9 hours. That actual coolest discovery, however, was our first ever 4-star item. A golden, legendary gadget part. It increased the charging damage of the Flywire, a gadget that Loki sucked, so maybe it was not exactly as exciting as I wanted it to be. Oh well, I guess I will use it for the fun of it. I also still had a massive pile of unused compasses. Remember when I previously said that the final compass was not working? Yeah, I was a complete idiot. It works perfectly fine. I simply had no idea how to use it. The earlier compasses behaved like a normal directional arrow, but these new ones used a hotter, color system instead of clearly pointing north, south, east, or west. That made the hidden islands significantly harder to locate. It also made me look like a complete doofus for failing to understand the mechanic. So I now had an entire collection of Zelda Shrine-style gadget tutorials waiting for me. After completing 5 sampler dungeons, all of those bloody compasses were finally gone. The 6 skill points I received confirmed how many trials I had completed. Because these missions rewarded absolutely no experience and no materials. They were simply challenging tutorials designed to teach us how to properly use one of the specific gadgets. Technically, I had owned 6 compasses, but the final one created some strange blue sonar pulse that I also did not understand. And I was not planning to waste another minute trying to figure this thing out, so I invested the new skill points into weapon and gadget damage before returning to the several remaining dens. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You already know the drill. And speaking of drills, our next target was another massive crystal located at the chocolate iceberg. There was absolutely no chocolate here. Anywhere. Although the name was not even spelled like chocolate. It was written as chocolate. Almost like choctopus. That's a pretty good YouTuber, by the way. Anyway, it was time to farm even more shards. Those sweet Spiralite shards were suddenly becoming incredibly valuable again after I wasted a massive portion of our supply developing crappy gadgets. And constructing stupid training dummies that I will never use. I drilled into the giant crystal without even reaching the 2 times multiplier, and honestly, I just did not feel like grinding it out this time. After the raid, Shiver wanted to speak with us, and I was slightly worried that this would be our goodbye. She had finally realized what had been missing from her showstopper. Shiver explained that she had always carried a small amount of doubt regarding the Master Mega. Why would such a perfect shark choose her? Well, I understand it. A shark apparently selected only one trainer during its entire lifetime, and knowing that did not exactly ease her concerns. However, Master Mega had traveled all this way specifically to find her. Because of that, Shiver had finally forced herself to properly face her feelings towards him. She suddenly started finding the shark cute. Seriously, reading this dialogue and writing this section of the script genuinely had me wondering whether the two of them were in some kind of relationship. My Shiver promised that she would never doubt Master Mega again. From this point onwards, the two of them would be going full throttle together. Sure, I do hope she just only means during battle. Anyway, reaching Shiver's maximum bond rewarded us with her final Briny Scroll, and an upgrade called Big Bite Royale. This improves her showstopper's damage and an area of effect, while also freezing every Salmonid caught inside of it. That's a pretty incredible upgrade. But sorry, Mom. The scroll was all I needed from you. It was finally time for Big Man to shine and begin increasing his bond with us instead. Shiver was now officially 100% complete. My heart, however, was not. We were off to the Mincha Buried Ruins, and yes, you heard that correctly, another ruin. It had been a while since we last explored one of these. The Salmonids here had reached level 26, but cleared sub-levels 1 and 2 without too much trouble. Of course, trouble always appeared on the final floor. Waiting for us as was the Big Hall Moss. Big Man Showstopper was excellent against this thing. Unlike Shiver and Fry's ultimates, which were basically single-use attacks, Big Man allowed us to ride around on top of him for an extended period. We could bait the Moss into launching itself above the ground, unload into it while it was vulnerable, and then simply rinse and repeat that. Big Man eventually ran out of energy, but from there it was just us and our splatter shot, which worked like a charm. We defeated the prick and recovered the fishbone toy relic, worth another 29 million. Big Man also discovered yet another note. This one looked like somebody had spilled an entire pot of coffee across a map. Shiver attempted to decipher it just like the broken rusted plates we had previously discovered attached to the bot, and she somehow managed to read something slightly terrifying. At the center, something drives the Salmonid's mat. It's gold. Yes, it's gold. Honestly, there was no need to say anything else, although maybe elaborating on the something terrifying parts would not have been such a bad idea. Fry did not care about that whatsoever. Her strategy remained fists first, questions later, and honestly, I was completely on board with that. Before searching that newly revealed region for that gold, I immediately repeated the same ruins with the tactical tank to collect its exclusive treasure. That rewarded us with the Night Sky Plate, worth, oh but Jesus, 74 million. Man, oh man, I was not expecting the value to jump from 29 million straight to 74. No complaints from me though. I would gladly take that. It was not quite enough to earn our next title, but it gave us one hell of a boost. I still needed to complete the ruins with the Ultra Power Tank to obtain the final treasure, and hey, having a third gadget was also pretty neat. There was no denying that. I had also swapped her weapon to a pair of dualies that dropped one level higher than our previous gun. Their effective range was shorter, but their damage per second was significantly higher. So far, I was absolutely loving these things. The dualies also allowed us to perform dodge rolls. These consumed a large amount of ink, but they were excellent for avoiding attacks or quickly escaping from enemy-colored ink. A great ability, at a great cost to our ink tank. Completing the power tank version rewarded us with the Skill Scratcher relic. Its value was just high enough to promote us to our next title, Wise Collector. Our next promotion would probably arrive sometime within the next century or two, considering it required another 1.5 billion in treasure value. How much goddamn depth was Splatsville in? After that, it was back to the speed tank. I was confident that completing one more mission would finally provide enough power X to upgrade it. I failed the den miserably, but yes, we still collected enough energy to transform it into the super speed tank. This unlocked an ability called the Tank Torrent. Whenever we emerged from swim form after remaining submerged in the ink for a short period of time, both our swimming and running speed increased. The torrents also pushed nearby Salmonids away while covering the ground beneath us in ink. It was almost a temporary moving barrier. Pretty darn neat. So naturally, you might assume that this upgrade allowed me to beat the den on my next attempt. No, that is a lie. This den was bloody impossible. The mission was filled with those stupid fish dicks, with tiny Salmonids circling around the pillar like they were playing Ring Around the Rosie, or like a bunch of strippers dancing around a pole. But they would probably be a little underage. And these idiots were the only enemies that dropped a large power eggs worth 100 each. We absolutely needed those eggs. And without them, completing the quota was basically impossible. So newsflash, I switched back to the power tank and equipped the almighty Splatlight's kill aura. I repeatedly activated it underneath the fish sticks, and yeah, guess what, I still failed. Because this mission was genuine bullshit. I tried and I tried again. I knew the game would eventually become harder, but tiny Salmonid strippers dancing around a pole were not what I expected to become my breaking point. Then I remembered something incredibly important. We could jump on top of the bot. Oh, Now, I will admit that I still did not beat the mission on my first attempt after discovering that. However, by standing on the bot and using the splat lights correctly, the challenge became significantly more manageable. We could reach the fish dicks much more easily, destroy the enemies circling above them, and collect the valuable power racks before that timer ran out, and eventually, we finally cleared the bloody den without a doubt. This was the hardest mission in the entire game so far. But man, was I extremely glad to be finished with it. Let's just hope the post-game does not become too much harder than this. Because this level was a genuine test with both skill and patience. My god. I had also spent 2 skill points on health now that weapon damage and gadget damage and the part slots were completely maxed out. With that horrible den finally out of the way, I continued along the main story path. At this point, I believed we had discovered every regular Salmonid species in the game. We still had mythical variants and bosses left to encounter, of course. I seriously doubted we would find any entirely new Salmonids roaming around in normal raids, but we still did. Near the end of the very next mission, we discovered a new Salmonid called Strong Arms. He was big, he was tall, his name claimed that he had strong arms, yet he was not particularly strong. So who was the real liar here, huh? The raid rewarded us with a pretty disappointing relic piece. It combines into the Salmonid looking back, increasing its value by 24 million. My guy, we still needed another 1.5 billion. This does not help. I was like handing a homeless person a single penny. At that point, you were just not even helping the guy. It's insulting. We had also discovered another compass. At this point, the thing could devour my insides for all I cared. The next main story destination was the Kurma lava flows, where level 28 Salmonids were waiting for us. There was absolutely no time to waste. We still needed to reach that Tower of Gold. Maybe we would finally discover a relic worth billions. Most treasure hunters would probably be satisfied with millions. But when you joined forces with Deep Cut, even billions barely covers the debt. The story missions were becoming slightly more creative, although not to the point where I needed to explain every single detail. During this raid, I spent more than half of the mission playing Subway servers, or for the real OGs, grind shellers from Skylanders and Imaginators. You had to be a real OG to remember that one though. Did we at least receive a valuable relic for our suffering? Well, if you consider the combined relic receiving an additional 6.7 million in value, well then f*** you. At least we collected another compass, which naturally meant we had unlocked another bloody den. This one had Salmonids level 30. Oh, the horror, the nightmares. I completed it on my first attempt, in exactly 1 minute and 34 seconds. So after demolishing that terrifying challenge, I continued exploring the Swish Rim Peak. It was another beautiful frozen environment filled with traversal challenges leading us closer towards the Tower of Gold. Hopefully the tower contains some golden chocolate coins. The game had already teased us with an old location called Chocolate Iceberg, without providing any actual chocolate. So receiving some golden chocolate euro coins would be an absolute win. Another valuable relic would also have been nice. Instead, we received a pathetic value increase of 9.3 million. Nintendo, what am I supposed to do with this? You set our next title requirement at more than 1 billion, and then start handing out scraps worth only a few million. We had already discovered individual treasures worth more than like 100 million, and now you're rewarding us like we're some underpaid mine worker losing his mind underground. Which, okay, maybe that's exactly what I had become. But you did not need to remind me inside of a video game. Unless this was all part of the long-term system. Maybe every relic still had a third form waiting to be discovered, something we had not seen yet that could raise their values to 1 or 2 billion. Oh, okay. Let's not get carried away here. 300 or 400 million would already be a decent start. During this beautiful period of me complaining, it would not be my video if I was not complaining about something, we cleared the Yilatai Icicles, and I only found that name worth mentioning because it ended in icicles, which, it's not funny. The raid rewarded us with another relic worth 610. No, not millions, not thousands, just 610, like my monthly salary. At least it was worth more than my remaining dignity. We did discover something genuinely exciting though, a 4-star legendary plastic bottle splatter shot, a true original weapon now available in shiny golden form. It also came equipped with Icebreaker, the same looking effect that our dualies had previously, used to occasionally freeze Salmonids in place. That ability had become so ridiculously useful that I could barely imagine playing without it. Even better, this was a rank 2 version of the part, twice as powerful as the one attached to our dualies. Or so I thought. During the raid, I realized that I could no longer freeze any Salmonids. The icon looked almost identical, but the effects were completely different. Our dualies had a 2% chance of freezing an enemy. The splatter shot instead dealt 4 times more damage against an already frozen Salmonid. However, the bonus applied to one shot and immediately removes the freeze effect, so it did not freeze anything itself. It was simply a damage multiplier against the enemies that somebody else had already frozen, and because this was a rapid-fire DPS weapon rather than a slow-hitting gun, the part blew, and I mean it blew big time. Even without a useful effect, the legendary splatter shot was undeniably just more powerful. So let's see how it performs against the Big Stack Stinger. This was our first proper Stinger boss fight, and oh my lord, it was easy. I honestly dealt around like 90% of the boss's health using Big Man's Showstopper. But hey, the splatter shot landed a finishing blow, so I guess it was officially combat approved. The raid itself was also relic approved. Our rewards was worth another 80 million, the highest value I had seen in quite some time. It still barely made a dent in the requirements for our next title, but at least it made me smile. Big Man told us that he felt like we had come a long way. Although apparently not quite far enough. Most of the fog surrounding the Spiralight Islands had finally disappeared. One final push should reveal the path ahead. As usual, Big Man had recovered another collection of notes from the ruins. For once, these were actually readable. Well, at least for anybody capable of speaking Squid. The notes appear to have been written by some kind of inventor. From the small amount I could understand, they might have been involved in creating the machinery responsible for producing all of the unnatural fog. Although my theory could have been completely wrong. Big Man believed the designs resembled parts from our bot. According to him, whoever wrote these notes had designed not only the bot, but also the 3 different tanks we had been using throughout the entire adventure. Our mysterious friend was no explorer. He was an engineer, which honestly explains quite a lot. Deep Cut then began discussing how the treasure would eventually be divided. Logically, you might expect something like a 75-25 split. Deep Cut would receive 75% and we would receive 25%. Although considering what we have been doing and repeatedly placing ourselves in mortal danger, I would personally argue that we deserved around 90%. Shiver apparently agreed with that number, but not in that direction. Her proposal was 90-10 split in favor of Deep Cut. Oh, listen lady, I will kill you. Because securing my own financial future would be quite nice. Big Man at least understood how much we had contributed. Thank you, Big Man. He proposed a 30-70 split. Now that sounded significantly better and considerably fair. Then Fry suggested her own plan. Unfortunately, a 30-30-30-30 is gonna be kinda hard. Cause I don't know how you can divide a treasure into 120%, but hey, fist first, thinking later, right? Either way, they promised we would receive a fair share. Big Man then asked to speak with us privately, and you already know what that means. He had noticed us becoming stronger and stronger after every raid and wanted to know the secrets behind our constant self-improvement. He already asked Fry and Shiver for advice, but both of them had responded with just the average TikTok motivational quote, "Just believe in yourself." That was also apparently the complete opposite of the advice written inside a survival guidebook, which was slightly strange. Obviously, confidence was important, but simply telling somebody to believe in themselves did not exactly explain how they were supposed to improve. Big Man was beginning to fear that he had exactly reached his maximum potential, that he could no longer become stronger. But then, he refused to give up. Not yet. He was here to the Manta clan. If he continued training alongside us on the battlefield, he believed he could begin making his own improvements to the Showstopper. Hell yeah, Big Man. That is exactly what I wanted to hear. Our conversation rewarded us with Big Man's first Briny Scroll. Only 2 more remains, alongside one final Showstopper upgrade. To increase Big Man's bonds, we needed to continue raiding. Coincidentally, we still needed to repeat the previous buried ruins 2 more times. Or well, hopefully only 2 more times. Because I was not exactly planning on failing. First, we returned with the tactical tank. Then we completed it again with the ultra power tank. Easy peasy. The most squeezy of the lemon wheezies. Completing both versions rewarded us with 2 more beautiful relics, each worth around 70 million. So they were basically collected for shits and giggles at this point. We then traveled towards the Caesar Mountains, or should I say, the Zaza Mountains. Although playing this game while stoned as somebody who does not even smoke might have been one of the worst ideas I've ever thought of. That's also why I don't do it. Then again, some strange thoughts begin appearing when you're surviving entirely on coffee, G Fuel, and the occasional Bapao bread, soaked in even more G Fuel. And I'm throwing out a hot take here. The bendy G Fuel flavor absolutely slaps. I have seen people claiming that it tastes like cough syrup. While I'm over here practically living on the stuff. desperately attempting to finish another video while flavored powder pumps directly through my veins. I'm living a good life, trust me. We then inspected our newly collected relics, and wait, yes, holy shit. They combined into a third form, increasing their total value by 770 million. Yes, this proves my point. This was the long-term payoff I had been talking about. That finally made a serious dent in the requirements for our next title. About bloody time. I also discovered a brand new pair of dualies. They were not 4-star legendary weapons, but they dropped at level 31, and that dealt significantly more damage than our previous pair. They also lacked a frozen enemy damage multiplier, but who cared? We had barely benefited from that effect anyway. These were unquestionably better. While traveling through the Krimpov cave, we encountered another strong arms. Although I had come up with a much more accurate name for this one. Personally, I would call him Weak Arms, because he was weak. It takes a certain level of intelligence to create a name that powerful. And because I clearly possesses that level of intellect, I am now officially the founder of the name Weak Arms, and you can also become a co-founder. All you need to do is smash that like and subscribe button and leave a comment saying, "Art Guys goes the greatest 100% YouTuber alive. He has the biggest beak of them all." Now, only you would not only be completely spitting lies, I mean facts, but you would also receive an official virtual stamp confirming your position as a co-founder on the name Weak Arms. How many co-founders could there possibly be? My channel, my rules. So, 1 million. Should that please you? Oh, and by the way, that raid also rewarded us with another 3rd stage relic, and it was worth a nickel. Fantastic! Completing the mission unlocks yet another buried ruin. As you already know, we were becoming far too good at this game. Again, currently being displayed in such a video player, which is probably why they call it a video game, although when you play it yourself, it's also a video game. But right now you're watching a video of a game. You catch my drift? Whether you did or not was completely irrelevant, because during that incredibly useful explanation, I already completed another 3 dents. Yes, 3 of the damn things. Most of them are honestly just not worth discussing, although the final one was extremely unique. We needed to eliminate a reasonably sized salmonid, approximately the same size as my dick, before an extremely aggressive timer expired. The dualies simply could not deal enough damage quickly enough, so I switched over to the flower umbrella. This thing was technically an umbrella, but a shotgun, and a shield all packed into one. Nobody cared about the shield though. The shotgun portion was that allowed us to completely destroy the little piece of crap before the timer ran out. With all of the dance finally cleared, I equipped the dualies again and traveled towards Bagel Beach, where we were here to gather even more Spiralite shards, as though we did not already completely reek of the things. I drilled through the giant crystal without bothering to increase the reward multiplier. Once that was finished, it was time for another buried ruin. That was not sarcastic. It was time for another buried ruin. These missions were genuinely some of my favorite parts of the game. I loved the multi-layered sublevels filled with endless waves of salmonids raining down on us from every possible direction. The enemies here were level 31, meaning we were finally fighting at approximately the intended level. Waiting on the final sublevel was the extra crispy fly fish, and damn, this boss fight was extra crispy. We were constantly being surrounded, ambushed, and pushed dangerously close to death. However, the arena was also filled with a huge number of beautiful, sweet, succulent power eggs, exactly what we needed to continue maxing out the remaining tanks. We also reached Raider level 32 during this mission. Our previously worthless spoon combined with another relic and transformed into the basic measuring spoon, still worth almost nothing. However, because the word basic was now included into the name, there was almost certainly a 3rd piece remaining. Maybe the final version would be called the colored measuring spoons, or something crazier like advanced measuring spoons. What was actually crazy was the enormous boss fight now waiting ahead of us. Shiver already accompanied us into one major temple. Fry had accompanied us into another. That meant there was only one member of the Deep Cut left, or should I say, one big man left on the table. Clearing this next boss would most likely reveal the Tower of Treasure. Most likely, no promises here. Big Man also discovered another note. This appeared to be the final message left behind by the mysterious engineer. To unknown seekers who may come here one day, I hope you can all use what I've left behind. That message made it sound like the engineer had never managed to accomplish their original goal. We still did not know why they had been explored the Spiralite Islands, and they did not appear to be searching for the golden treasure, or actually any treasure at all. Maybe the answer was waiting beside the gold. Big Man admitted that he was afraid to enter the temple. Fry and Shiver immediately volunteered to take his place, but Big Man had already promised that he would become stronger and make himself proud. And my friend, if you made yourself proud, then you would make us proud as well. So let's have a go at it. Although before having a go at it, I quickly repeated the buried ruins using both the power and tactical tanks. I simply wanted to get those runs out of the way. I had also removed the next upgrade limiter. The following limiter required another 20 purchases. We could spend 3 points on additional part slots, 4 on gadget damage, and 4 on weapon damage. That added up to 11, meaning another 9 skill points would be forced into health. The power tank raids created another relic combination worth jack shit. The tactical tank reward was somehow even worse. However, the number of 2-piece combinations we were creating strongly suggested that several massive 3rd stage relics were waiting in the upcoming missions. If those completed combinations began arriving back to back, oh man, I can already smell the riches from here. Anyway, it was finally time to enter the Kula temple. Waiting inside was the Desert Ice Crusher, a gigantic frozen monstrosity that we needed to beat the absolute crap out of. That fight followed a similar structure. We attacked the beast directly whenever possible, survived the waves of Salmonids, it summoned, gathered enough power X, and used the bot to create openings where we could unleash everything we had. Big Man Showstopper was especially useful because we could continue riding him around the arena while dealing damage and avoiding the endless attacks flying towards us. After one brutal battle, the Desert Ice Crusher finally went down. And once again, we discovered one of those mysterious statues, and I doubt the next parts will surprise you. Somebody needed to sing another strange song that I could still not understand a single word of. And this time, it was finally Big Man's moment to shine. The next, and possibly final constellation was revealed, and remember when Big Man mentioned that he could dance? Well, oh my god, was he not lying, man. That man had some seriously smooth moves. The enormous constellation appeared to depict some kind of monster, a 3-headed mermaid dragon. Wait, Grim Matchstick, is that you? Indeed, Fry. What the hell was that sound? Shiver pointed out the incredibly obvious fact that those noises did not sound particularly friendly. Big Man immediately suggested that we should build. So we built, or well, maybe not, because right in front of us was the golden treasure. Except it was not gold, it was a huge power egg. If that was supposed to be legendary, then the enormous doorway finally appeared to be complete. The raid had also rewarded us with some incredibly valuable gear, including the third and final piece of one relic set. All 3 pieces combined into the crown of the Omnivore. Its value increased by another 1 billion. That was enough to promote us to the title of Ace Adventurer. The next title required another 7 billion in treasure value, so basically, we needed to reach 10 billion overall. That was still miles away, and for now, nowhere near our highest priority. Because what the hell had that power egg been? What the hell could it be? Why did it... Oh, I have so many questions. Long story short, it was not an ordinary power egg. Something was also inside of it, and Big Man was suddenly nowhere to be found. No. Do not tell me. Oh, Jesus. I was genuinely worried for a second. Big Man was safe, but he had received some breaking news over the radio. Salmonids were wreaking havoc across the world. They had attacked multiple cities, all at once. So now, Splatsville was not only going to fall even further into debt, but the entire world was about to descend into chaos. Unfortunately, this matched the engineer's notes perfectly. The gold at the center of the islands would drive the Salmonids mad. That so-called gold had been the enormous golden power egg. Shiver was still more annoyed by the fact that there was no gold. But come on! Get your priorities straight, lady! The gold is not our main concern right now. Fry wanted to return to Splatsville and help defend the city. Shiver disagreed. If we returned home, the attacks would simply continue. Splatsville could defend itself for a little while. We, on the other hand, needed to reach the source and put a permanent stop to this. Although Shiver's main motivation was still the possibility of a hefty reward for the brave heroes who saved the world. Riches, 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 gold, money, that's all she ever thought about. Our world map was then replaced by a brand new area, the Great Salmon Mess Hall, and brought an entirely new collection of raids with it. We began at sea's surface. These ruins had apparently been located at the center of the Spearlight Islands the entire time. A gigantic hole had opened beneath us, and the golden power egg had fallen directly inside. So naturally, we needed to follow it. This was probably the most ominous and unsettling part of the entire game so far. For a game rated PEGI 7, oh my god. It was not exactly horrifying, but the strange music and creepy atmosphere had made the entire area feel genuinely uncomfortable. Shiver believed that jumping directly into the enormous hole might be slightly too dangerous. So instead we began searching for an alternative entrance. To reach it, we needed to fight strong arms again, or as I prefer to call them, weak arms. The game claimed that the other Salmonids surrounding him were his goons, but honestly, weak arms was the real goon here. The enemies surrounding him were the actual threat. After dealing with them, we discovered that the entrance to our alternative route was completely blocked. However, it appeared to connect directly towards the giant hole underneath us. Nothing was stopping us from creating our own entrance. Luckily, there was a beautiful drilling spot directly in front of us. And just a small reminder, we had already drilled through hundreds of layers throughout this adventure. This was not our first drillio. The passage led us into another multi-sub-level extravaganza known as the Upper Tier. Blasting through the first two sub-levels should have been familiar territory. I had already completed this type of mission more than 30 times. However, the difficulty had increased dramatically. The Salmonids had reached level 37, even worse. The timer had been reduced. Normally these missions gave us around 100 seconds. Now we only received 80, while still being expected to reach almost the exact same power egg quota. Sub-level 1 was already a barely successful situation. Sub-level 2 was even closer. I was actually splatted during that attempt. The sudden jump in difficulty was absolutely insane. Big Man did still manage to increase his bond with us during the chaos. He explained that our teamwork had improved considerably over the previous raids. He could now anticipate our preferences, habits, and strange little quirks much more easily. He thought that was pretty cool, and honestly, so did I, mate. Big Man had also created a metal song that he had been listening to repeatedly whenever he wanted to relax. He promised to play it around the hideout ship from time to time, so we needed to keep our ears open. He had even started uploading videos featuring some of his singing. Big Man was clearly extremely excited to tell us about it, although he also seemed incredibly nervous. He asked us not to mention the channel to Shiver and Fry. You got it, pal. I also upload videos without a single soul in the real world knowing, so you are not alone. We received Big Man's second Briny Scroll. As awesome as that was, before confidently throwing myself back into sub-level 2, I developed several new parts for our turrets and High Fiver. These were easily the best gadgets available for the tactical tank. With those upgrades equipped, I was convinced that we could overcome anything the third sub-level threw at us. No matter how difficult the final boss was. We could beat it. We would beat it. I also brought along a level 33 4-star plastic bottle splatter shot, not necessarily because of its parts, but because it provided much more reliable long-range damage. I had equipped a bonus that increased our damage by 20% whenever we fired from a distance, and when I wanted to properly take advantage of it, sub-level 3 was introduced. The season combo. We needed to eliminate 2 bosses within a single 100-second time limit. I had pretty much already given up the moment I saw them, and honestly, I probably just should have. This might have been the point where I finally needed to admit that our ridiculous grinding had not been anywhere near enough. I did get reasonably close, but still, this was not even the final boss. If I could not beat this mission, then I probably should not even attempt whatever would be beyond it. The fight was closer than it had any right to be, but I had also only cleared sublevel 2 with 4 seconds remaining, so we were simply not ready yet. So instead of repeatedly smashing my head against the exact same wall, I decided to step away and complete another 6 Zelda Shrine raids. Or gadget tutorials, whatever you want to call them. They were still pretty entertaining, not gonna lie, and additional skill points were always welcome. During the 4th trial, I finally figured out how the blue compasses worked. Once the signal began glowing completely, we simply needed to continue traveling in that exact direction until we landed directly on said hidden location. So they were not actually that much harder. I guess the developers simply wanted to make the compass hunts feel slightly less repetitive, but honestly, it was a pretty funny variation. After completing all 6 trials, there was still more waiting for us because I had not discovered every compass yet. However, my main goal was still to overlevel ourselves. We would eventually need to complete all of this content anyway, so why not grind it out now? I began clearing every available spicy den, or well, every one currently available. You never know what the post-game might throw at us. I had already completed 3 spicy raids, and so far, everything was going surprisingly well. We had also finally powered up our tactical tank for the first time, transforming it into the super tactical tank. I then completed another 4 spicy dens using the speed tank. Every single one was cleared fairly easily. Those runs provided enough power X to completely max it out, transforming it into the ultra speed tank. That unlocked another gadget slot, which was awesome, but before enjoying that luxury, I descended into another 7 spicy dens. These included the ridiculous pole dancing fish sticks, yes. The mission I had previously called the hardest level in the entire game had now officially been crossed off on the spicy checklist, and that made me extremely happy. And honestly, pretty proud of myself. After clearing all of those missions, only 4 spicy dens remained. Unfortunately, the easiest one contained level 47 salmonids. I came extremely close to clearing the Kushla Den on spicy difficulty, which contained level 48 enemies, but I eventually just stopped trying. Continuously repeating the same challenge would have been stupid, but for now at least. Even so, only 3 other spicy dens remained afterwards, which was incredible progress. To continue our spicy cleanup, I moved on towards several spicy buried ruins. Man, oh man, the tactical tank was the tank for these missions. Combining the turrets with splash damage upgrades was so unbelievably powerful that it was almost impossible to properly explain. After completing the 2nd spicy buried rune, Big Man told us that he had experienced a breakthrough during our previous raid. The maintenance showstopper was not simply just an attack. What it was truly about was love. Oh hell yeah, man. That is the spirit. Hit that dab. Why does every Nintendo character eventually need to do a dab? Big Man explained that the dance represented trust in your partner, appreciation for both the ocean and the land, and respect for your opponent. He would use all of that love as fuel to create fiery, passionate manta dance. The next time he performed, he promised that the dance would be entirely for us. He would burn brighter than ever before and become seared to perfection. Big Man Showstopper received its final upgrades, its damage increased significantly, and every Salmonid caught inside the attack would now also be scorched. As incredible as that was, I finally needed to let my big man go. My big friend. It was time to begin building our bond with Fry. That meant bringing her along for our next couple of raids. Or well, couple might have been a slight understatement. Reaching maximum bond appeared to require around 41 raids per bot buddy. So yeah, only another 40 bloody missions alongside Fry. No problem. I was simply going to miss Big Man. During the next buried ruin, I equipped the Shrimp Roller. This was our first weapon containing 3 parts. It was also our first 5-star weapon. I was fairly confident that 5 stars represented the maximum rarity, making this a pretty incredible discovery. I had absolutely no idea which specific raid had dropped it, but one thing was becoming extremely obvious. Spicy raids provided much better loot. I had also upgraded the rollers at Fry's workshop. Its original level was 37, but I increased it by another 9 levels, bringing it all the way to level 46. That was extremely expensive. I needed to salvage approximately 1/4 of our entire weapon inventory just to afford it, but this thing was an absolute powerhouse. After completing another 3 buried runes, we finally maxed out the specialist tank, transforming it into the ultra specialist tank. Not only did this unlock another gadget slot, but we could now equip one gadget belonging to the power class, so naturally I threw the beautiful splat lights into the mix. With that, every ink tank was officially 100% maxed out. We had also nearly completed every buried rune currently available, although more would apparently unlock once we reached the post-game. The only mission I could not finish was the final level 46 spicy rune. For now at least. I did quickly return to level 48 Spicy Den and actually managed to complete it. Dens were considerably easier than buried runes, but I was still pretty damn proud of that one. I also cleared the level 47 Spicy Den, leaving only the hardest of the hardest. A level 49 mission against one seemingly unkillable little chum. I was not going to give up immediately, so I returned with a higher level Brella. We did considerably better, but I still did not get anywhere near defeating it. I tried again using the splat roller and managed an even stronger run, but it was still not enough. At that point, I knew continuing would be stupid. We simply needed to become stronger first. So I began replaying every old story mission on spicy difficulty, and oh, this was boring, tedious, and somehow even more bloody boring. It was unbelievable what I was doing to myself. This was the absolute pinnacle of repetitive filler shite. To make the grind slightly more worthwhile, I also collected every item I had missed during the original versions of these raids. The collectible layouts were exactly the same on Spicy difficulty, because in case it was still not obvious, Spicy raids were literally the same missions, just significantly harder. Allow me to rant for a moment, because man oh man, this was exactly the kind of casual filler content I would never understand developers adding. I know there's probably around only 2 hours left of the main story. I had also heard that the post-game was where Splatoon Raiders truly began to shine, with additional buried ruins and other new challenges, but this spicy nonsense was simply every story mission repeated with stronger Salmonids. Even the completion rewards were complete dookie. The equipment discovered inside the raids at least scaled towards our current level, meaning I was regularly finding golden 4 and 5-star parts and weapons. But besides that, I was generally wondering what the point of these missions was. There was no proper guides available while I was writing this. It was just me and my achievement hunting eyeballs. I completed almost every spicy crystal hunting raid and discovered every collectible hidden inside them. All that remained were several additional spicy story missions. However, it was now 5 in the morning. I started playing at 10. That meant I had been going for 19 straight hours. After spending the final 3 hours grinding collectibles and this repetitive spicy nonsense, it was finally time to call it a night and discover what kind of progress we could make tomorrow. Or well, technically today. It was already past midnight, but everybody says tomorrow. Every reasonable human being, at least. Okay. After finally closing my eyeballs for a while, the first thing I did was complete another 2 campaign mission on spicy difficulty. During the second one, I also discovered another Briny Scroll and compass. I had now supposedly found every compass, but before clearing their hidden dungeons, I wanted to finish as many remaining spicy raids as I realistically could handle. That meant completing Ribbo Lake on both normal and spicy difficulty. I still needed to search for collectibles during the regular version because the collectible checklist had never appeared. Why? Because I had somehow completely skipped this raid during the main story, and naturally there was another old compass hidden inside it. After completing all of the sweet Spearlight shard raids on Spicy, it was time to replay the major bosses. The first Spicy boss was so ridiculously easy that I dealt more damage than the game seemed prepared to handle. Look at that health bar just deleting. The fight was apparently programmed to require at least 2 power egg phases, meaning the boss simply refused to die during the first one regardless of how much damage I caused. Pretty funny. The exact same thing happened against the giant spinning eel, the long schlong, on spicy difficulty. An enormous flying chunky bastard was also considerably tougher, considering it was level 48, and the increased difficulty mostly appeared through its absurd amount of health, rather than the damage he did. I did not even realize this was possible, but I could completely bombard its weak point without breaking it and triggering the stagger animation. The thing simply refused to fall. Even though the fight took significantly longer than the previous bosses, it still only summoned 2 power egg phases. The drill continued dealing its usual massive damage, allowing us to eventually finish the beast without too much trouble. With every available spicy boss defeated, I returned to the level 46 Buried Ruin that had previously stopped us, and to my surprise, I did not exactly breeze through it, but as sure as shooting completed the bloody thing. Once again, sub-level 2 was the biggest piece of crap. I finished it with only 12 seconds remaining. The final boss was incredibly easy. So with that victory secured, every currently available spicy Buried Rune was completo. Now we simply needed to wait for the additional runes that would unlock during the post-game. We also completed every available spicy raid except for that level 49 little chum den. However, it appears that all of our recent level ups and attack upgrades had finally made enough of a difference, because when I returned, I casually defeated it on my first attempt, and it was not even a particularly well optimized run. All that suffering earlier, and now the little bastard went down without much of a fight. Before returning to the insanely difficult Wombo Combo story battle, I wanted to remove the remaining compasses from my inventory. Were these finally the last ones? Well, I sure as hell hoped so. There were no more visible sampler dungeons on the map, after completing another 6 of them. I genuinely hoped that that was the end. Some of these trials were surprisingly difficult, although most remained fairly manageable. Overall, they were fun little challenges, but also pretty The skill points they rewarded allowed me to remove the upgrade limiter one final time. Every upgrade, besides health now, costs 2 skill points, so that was wonderful. I then made one quick return to the Shalish vents, because the final collectible Briny Scroll was still hidden there. Once I discovered it, there was officially nothing left standing between us and the remainder of the main story. Nothing! Except for that ridiculous Wombo combo. I completed several raids to calculate roughly how long the remaining Salmonid Research would take. And according to my incredible mathematical genius, completing the research would take longer than everything else we have done so far in the entire game combined. Time-wise, of course. And I'm talking like full playtime. All of the main story missions, every side activity, every spicy raid, every collectible, everything we had endured up on this point. Simply grinding Salmonids until my thumbs became black and blue would take even longer than all of this. So I was beginning to question whether I genuinely wanted to finish it. You already know what I did. However, you don't know how it went. However, while performing these calculations, I had already managed to completely max out my bond with Fry. That was why I still pressed record to provide that small update. Afterwards, I immediately switched back to Big Man because his showstopper was unquestionably the best one for this miserable Salmonid grind. Deep Cut also gathered together to celebrate the fact that we helped all 3 members improve their showstoppers into practically unstoppable forces. They began discussing how they could possibly reward us, and after careful consideration, they had chosen, according to Fry, the coolest gift imaginable: a free pass to every single concert on Deep Cut's nationwide tour. So basically, a small little note telling us to go f*** ourselves. Thank you very much. My next objective was completing all of the currently available boss Salmonid Research. Surprisingly, those requirements were okayly reasonable. Unlike regular chumps, where we needed to defeat up to 30,000 enemies, and some of the stronger Salmonids, such as Big Haul Moss and Longline Steel Eels, required around 100 kills. And that still might not sound like much until you remember that they only appeared once at the end of certain buried ruins, and usually took more than 2 minutes to reach and defeat. 100 multiplied by 2 minutes was already more than 3 hours. And that was for one research entry, so naturally, I assumed that major bosses would require a similarly ridiculous number of victories. Instead, they only required 5 kills. Yeah, I have no idea why. Almost every regular Salmonid Research entry jumped from 1,000 to 10,000, or from 3,000 to 30,000, but the bosses went from defeating them 3 times to defeating them 5 times. This pissed me off far more than it probably should have. And before you say, but defeating each boss 5 times is extremely reasonable and fair. Yes, it is extremely reasonable and fair. And that is exactly the problem. Every major boss could be finished in like 35 minutes every single entry here. Meanwhile, several basic Salmonids would require more than 3 hours of repetitive grinding each after the entire game was already complete. Do you understand how ridiculous this is? The boss fights also contained massive waves of smaller Salmonids, so I had just hoped that repeatedly farming the bosses would naturally provide progress towards many other research entries, but there was no point in repeatedly farming the main bosses when its own research was already finished after only 5 runs. And technically, I had already completed 2 of those because I had to do the spicy story playthroughs. So yes, for once, receiving a smaller requirement genuinely annoyed me. With every currently available boss research entry completed, I decided to stop grinding for a while, cause we still had an actual main story to finish. Hello, get your priorities straight, kid. So yeah, this time I was, well, slightly overleveled. When we returned to sub-level 3, the wombo combo bosses were no longer a problem whatsoever. I eliminated both of them, well within the 100-second limit. And I mean, well within. However, the ruins did not end there. We had started inside the upper tier, but for the first time in the entire game, a 4th sub-level appeared. Welcome to the middle tier. Unsurprisingly, I was also completely overleveled for this section. The strange part was that the mission continued without giving us another major boss on sub-level 6, or 7, or 8. No, the next battle appeared on sub-level 9, where we faced the Season's Trio. Hell yeah, now this was hype. Because the entire middle tier only took around 5 minutes while overleveled. That meant I would only need to spend approximately 500 minutes repeatedly clearing it until I had defeated 100 Season's Trios. At least these 3 enemies appear together. I absolutely could not wait for the post-game research grind. Oh my lord, oh my lord. And you can bet your sweet butt cheeks that the floors continued. Finishing the middle tier dropped us into sub-level 10. The lower tier. We traveled from sub-level 10 to sub-level 19. Now, what made this an excellent farming location was that almost every single floor contained at least one seasoned boss, including the long-line steel eel. However, one practical fool was still missing. A fool I never believed would dare to show his face again. A fool so pathetic that I would still need to eliminate him around 93 more times. Yet, because he barely appeared anywhere, reaching that number was going to become a complete nightmare. But then we reached sub-level 19. And no way it was him! Weak arms. The man that finally returned to seek revenge after all the shit we had spoken about him. Unfortunately, he could not even survive against us for more than 20 seconds. Some revenge, mate. After clearing the lower tier, it appears that the next area would finally contain the last battle. Big Man told us how proud he was. Shiver was becoming increasingly tired of how ridiculously deep these ruins continued going. Meanwhile, Fry was excited because the bot had detected an enormous response somewhere nearby. We had to be approaching the gigantic golden power egg. Big Man wondered whether the egg had only started acting strangely because of everything we had done throughout the islands. And honestly, that raised a worrying question. What if this entire disaster was our fault? What if the Salmonids had not activated the egg? What if we had? Either way, it needed to be stopped. We had come too far to turn around now. It was time to bring the creature one final fight. Deep Gut wished us the best of luck as the last mission appeared on the map. The Throne Room. The Salmonids here were level 40. But at this point, that was the least of our concerns. We drilled down into sub-level 20, and in the distance stood the enormous doorway that we had spent the entire adventure slowly lighting up. There was a Salmonid strapped inside the gigantic power egg. A big man did not attempt to communicate with it, he simply drove the bot forwards and began drilling directly into the thing. The first phase was honestly a major disappointment. We needed to ride the surfboard while the distance counter slowly dropped from 3000 meters to 0. The attacks dealt a laughably small amount of damage. That made sense considering we were ridiculously overleveled by this point. For some reason our health regeneration was also massively increased during this section, making the entire encounter one of the shortest and easiest fights imaginable. Although if that was really the fight. No way. It was the three-headed dragon from the constellation. The creature was inviting us into one final battle. So naturally, we returned the favor and allow it to rest peacefully in the afterlife. Deep Gut began flexing their own name before hyping us up as well. Now this final boss fight was actually something. We needed to jump between moving surfaces using the bots while the enormous three-headed Salmonids continuously fired one gigantic super mega laser of piss directly across the battlefield. And oh, it hurt. That's a lot of damage. Traversing between the platforms was extremely dangerous because touching the beam for even a brief moment could kill us almost instantly. There were 3 enormous platforms in total. Each one constantly launched bubbles and Salmonids toward us. Once again, we received only 100 seconds to collect enough power eggs, fully charge the bot, and launch a drilling attack into one of the monster's heads. If we failed to destroy the head before the timer expired, it was an immediate game over. Luckily, that did not happen. Our little flying hideout ship carried us between the platforms, and even weak arms decided to join the battle. That was pretty fun. Once the final power egg quota had been reached, we launched the last drill. Every one of the creature's faces had now been cracked open. Unfortunately, the battle was not over. The 3 heads began combining their power into one enormous beam. There were no more Salmonids around us, no power eggs, and no obvious way to charge another attack. Luckily, the surrounding land continued collapsing, revealing a path towards our actual hideout ship. The structure we had been standing on earlier was only the test range, which had now split away from the main base. We rushed towards the top of the ship to control the crane, giving us one final opportunity to escape this mess. And that, my friends, was the bad ending. A bad ending that I completely obtained on purpose. I definitely did not accidentally fail because I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I have previously uploaded a video without showing its bad ending, and people were not particularly pleased about that. So there you go. You're welcome. Totally not accidental. It was time to actually save the world. And that was it. That's it. The main story of Splatoon Raiders. As expected, it was not exactly the most groundbreaking narrative ever written, but this game was never really designed as a traditional story experience. It was much closer to a grind-heavy looter shooter. Not actually much closer, it is a grind-heavy looter shooter. That might not be obvious from your perspective, considering the remaining runtime of this video was slowly dwindling, but to me, the big boy behind the controller, I still had around 100,000 Salmonids left to splat. And there was still an entire post-game waiting for us. Bloody hell. I kept forgetting that we also had 4 additional buried ruins to unlock, more relics to discover, and only around half of the available weapons collected. These are going to be the most grindiest things I've ever done on this channel. Do I regret it? Hopefully not. I watched the entire credit sequence. I genuinely loved the artwork they created for it, especially the way all of the written credits faded and spiraled into the background. It was a surprisingly original way to present the ending. Aww, no. Thank you, Nintendo, for asking me to kill 30,000 chumps. There's absolutely no need to thank me. So, what the hell was that supposed to mean? Splatoon Raiders 2? I was fairly certain Nintendo had previously suggested that the series would become more competitively focused from this point onwards. Maybe Splatoon 4 would receive a much larger and more expensive story mode. Honestly, that could be pretty neat. Completing the throne room also rewarded us with a 5-star version of the weapon we had used during the surfing sequence. The Primo plastic bottle splatter shot. That Primo right there is very important for the future, but we'll get into that. It's specialized in maximum ink efficiency. With the world saved, everybody lived happily ever after. Except, why are we then still standing on the Spiralite Islands? Big Man asked the exact same question. Well, I will save you the remaining dialogue. Maybe, just throwing this one out of the window. No script here. It might be because there are still around maybe 100,000 goddamn Salmonids left to slaughter, Big Man. Have you not been listening? Have you kept your eyes closed throughout the entire journey? You idiots! Fry and Shiver was still here because they had never actually obtained legendary treasure they came searching for. And that brought us into the post-game content. Apparently the bot had detected something called legendary loot. Clearing the remaining fog revealed 3 small islands surrounding their main region. Each one contained another buried ruin. These hidden ruins supposedly held extremely rare relics. Although they were also crawling with incredibly powerful Salmonids, which honestly is perfect. We still had quite a few of those bastards left to eliminate. Every ruin contained 1 special relic, and if we managed to discover all of them, something unusual might happen. So the story grind was not completely over just yet, and honestly, that's actually nice. That's decently exciting. Every single den had now unlocked, and oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. Every last map from buried ruins and dens to regular story missions now had a super spicy version. Oh, yeah, super fun. Genuinely, what the hell is this game? As though the missions were not already difficult enough, some of these super spicy challenges also rewarded legendary old compasses. So, even more. God dang! They really were not lying when they said this game truly began to shine during the post-game. Although, how much of it can we really call shining? Or is it just a bad playtime? I think it was too bad playtime. As a small test, I attempted the very first buried ruin, the easiest one. It contains level 42 Salmonids, and to be completely fair, it was reasonably manageable. The difficulty still felt balanced rather than completely unfair. This raid only contained a single sublevel with no final boss, but there were still several important things worth mentioning. First of all, almost everything could kill us in 1 or 2 hits, depending on the enemy of course. The damage scaling had gone completely off the charts, and our previously unstoppable build had suddenly became okay. Luckily, we still received 3 retries. The game also increased the timer from the usual 100 seconds to 150 seconds, although we needed to collect 4,800 power eggs, so those additional 50 seconds were absolutely necessary. Without them, the mission would have been impossible. Even so, I managed to complete it on my first attempt, and the treasure was worth 3 bi- Well, yeah. It has been a while since we discovered another relic, and this was easily our most valuable one yet. We were still around 4 billion short of the next title, but hey, this was progress. Alright, let's try the hardest buried ruin, containing level 46 Salmonids. I still managed to defeat it on my first attempt. However, I finally understood why people claimed the post-game was where Splatoon Raiders really truly began to shine. For the first time, I actually needed to lock in. This was no longer a mindless hack and slash experience. You needed to lock the absolute frickety frick in, or you were dead. And I mean dead. These missions were hard as balls. Completing it rewarded us with another piece belonging to the golden relic we had just discovered. That upgraded it into its second stage relic and brought us extremely close to earning our next title. I then completed the next buried rune, confirming that all of these post-game missions consisted of only one sublevel without a dedicated boss fight. However, the seasoned Salmonids that normally acted as final bosses were now casually roaming around the battlefield like standard enemies. That should give you a decent idea of how much the difficulty has increased. It was also excellent for Salmonid Research and might make the grind slightly less miserable. Completing the tactical tank version rewarded us with another golden relic, a golden frying pan. Its value finally promoted us to the title of Island Scholar. About bloody time. The next title required us to reach a total treasure value of 30 billion. So I returned to collect the remaining relics using both the power and speed tanks. First up was power. My first power tank attempt was inside the second hardest buried ruin, and I only just managed to complete it. Remember when I said the speed tank was horrible? Well, I do not take that back. Speed was still dookie caca, but the tactical tank was simply the tank. It's just the tank. It's the world of tank. The only genuinely excellent power gadget was the Splatolites. The Splat shit had become incredibly weak this late into the game, meaning the power tank itself had slowly become one of the worst options. I know I spent the beginning of the game glazing the thing, but I was genuinely surprised when I completed the raid with only 5 seconds remaining. Damn, I already missed my turret. No matter how difficult it was, I still managed to clutch out the power tank version. Now it's time for speed. Just like the tactical tank, I could equip one power gadget. The ultra speed tank could equip one tactical gadget. So while most speed gadgets still low-key sucked, we could at least bring along our wonderful turret. And that turret continued working miracles. I completed almost every speed tank raid flawlessly, apart from the final mission. I filled that one while only 23 power X short. That's absolutely stupid, but honestly, who cares? I loved repeating raids. I already replayed the entire game on spicy difficulty, and now after completing all of this, I could replay everything again on super spicy against Salmonids reaching around level 80. That was double the level of the enemies we had fought during the final boss, so yes, bullshit. Having to replay the entire game 3 times already felt slightly cheap, and after finishing all of that, we still most likely need to begin mindlessly grinding because the RNG weapon drops on Salmonid Research never seemed to end. There was no finish line in sight. After collecting and completing every golden relic set, we earned another title, Gold Whisperer. For the first time, however, our additional shard yield bonus only increased by 5% instead of the usual 10%. So apparently they are making the rewards worse as well. The entire crew celebrated after we completed the final hidden ruins and collected all 3 full sets of shiny golden relics. Deep Gut believed they could earn a king's ransom by selling them. For once, they had not wasted their time chasing fool's gold. Well, Shiver mostly had not. Their raid had been an enormous success. It finally appeared that our adventure was over. It was time to return to Splatsville. But then Big Man stepped in. No. Something strange had appeared on the bot's radar. Again! You don't have to guess it, because you already know it. It's more loot. Really? Ho! How unexpected. We checked the treasure map again. Oh, wow. Would you look at that? The new area had revealed yet another location. Hidden below everything else was a level 50 raid with the strange name Bottomless Buffet F1F3. Weird ass name, but sure. Let's investigate it with a specialist tank once again surgically attached to our spine. This was the same location we had previously seen glowing, the chamber where the gigantic golden power egg had originally been resting, except the egg was now gone. In its place were 3 strange golden discs, or burners, or whatever the hell these things were. Hold on. We had also collected 3 shiny golden relics, so we placed 1 relic on top of each light. The hatch opened up. Apparently, these ruins extended even deeper than anyone had expected, and honestly, even I was surprised. We descended towards floor 1. Yes, not another sublevel, an actual floor. We received 90 seconds to collect 2,100 power eggs, and that is easy peasy. The first raid continued until floor 3. Something in the back of my mind suggested that this might become some kind of endless dungeon. But no, the mission ended after floor 3. Our reward was a new relic piece that combined with an older one, bringing its value to a staggering 123. Not thousands, not millions, but just 123. I mean, hey, it's still worth more than my inheritance. More importantly, I discovered 3 completely new weapons during the raid. Finally, every single one was a Primo weapon. That was pretty cool. Hopefully, we could eventually find a Primo roller. The engine did continue though, so I guess it was at least partially endless. Our next destination was Bottomless Buffet, Floor 4, Floor 6. The sameness had increased from level 50 to level 51. That most likely meant that the level would continue rising as we descended. But how deep did this place actually go? How many floors were waiting underneath us? Well, we would discover that eventually, and I strongly emphasize, eventually. During my next run, I reached floor 6 and found the next treasure location. However, I failed the mission after dying for the first time. Not because the timer expired, I was genuinely killed. I never thought I would be saying this again, but the post-game contains significantly more content than I had expected. My dudes, my ladies, I was on the levels one more. I was weak. We had also suddenly unlocked some new construction options, presumably because the main story was complete. The first facility allowed us to upgrade gadget parts. The second unlocked weapon power swapping, allowing us to replace or improve special abilities attached to our weapons. As epic as this upgrade sounded, a few small stat improvements were not suddenly going to make these runs easy. I decided to give the dualies another chance. This time I equipped the Primo Sippy Cup dualies. I had upgraded them by 9 levels, increasing them from level 44 to level 53. Was that a smart investment? Yeah, I guess so. At the very least, they allowed me to finally clear floor 6. Descending towards floor 9 did not feel completely regrettable either. I almost completed the section on my first attempt, but death eventually got the better of me. After 2 runs, I cleared floor 9. Naturally, I immediately attempted floors 10 to 12. But I'll be damned, I completed them on my first try. It was close, but finished was finished. So sure, if this dungeon was apparently going to continue forever, then let's move onwards towards floor 13 through 15, and I beat those too. I was just as surprised as you were. Attempting this already felt like a ridiculous idea, yet somehow we were now descending towards floor 16 through 18. The Salmonid level suddenly jumped from 54 to 57, which was not really exciting, yet I still cleared it. There was not much more to say. Yes, it was another extremely close call, but also yes, I absolutely nailed it. Straight W's. The difficulty then began increasing by only 1 level at a time again, so that's good. But I had become so goddamn good at this game. Floors 19 through 21 wiped out. Floors 22 through 24 wiped. Floors 25 through 27 were definitely not a breeze. But once again, Big Man and I, you and Arctic High School, were heading towards floors 28 through 30. I was seriously beginning to wonder, how deep was this place going? After some quick research, I discovered that that bottomless buffet was officially infinite. At least as of now, nobody has really seen the max cap yet. However, to earn 100% completion for this mode, we needed to reach at least floor 100s. Because there are also some more rewards after that. And I definitely went deeper than floor 100. But I did not look up what's at floor 100s, because I did not want to spoil the actual reward for myself. So I guess we will discover what that is sooner or later. Also completing floor 30. Afterwards, I scrapped a massive number of unwanted weapons to obtain additional shards and parts. I then attempted several super spicy dens and successfully cleared 6 of them. Everything was going surprisingly well. Until the Salmonid Lids appeared, and those little Alienware pieces of shit. Oh my god, I hated them. I thought switching to the speed tank would become the greatest tactical decision of my entire life. Surely I could simply jump on top of the Salmonid Lids and immediately reach their weak points. Except you pass straight through them. There was no easy way to cheese these. It's just a horrible fight. And there was also absolutely no way I was wasting any more time repeatedly attempting it. Something pretty strange happened once we reached level 50. Apparently, level 50 was the maximum. Instead of simply continuing towards level 51, the game began displaying our progress as level 50 plus 2. Why not just call it level 52? Why can we not just let the number continue naturally? Why the hell were we putting a plus sign behind it? Who cares? Because it was time to begin the worst activity of all of them, for the 3rd time. And I cannot believe I'm saying this. I began replaying every single story raid on the super spicy difficulty. One more f***ing boring mission after another that was slowly slaughtered and crossed off the list. We wandered around familiar environments, eliminated the same salmonids again, and repeated the content we had already completed twice. At least seasoned salmonids could now appear during these missions. Unfortunately, the ones I was genuinely worried about barely showed themselves. Hence, why I'm so worried about them. The long-line steel eel appeared maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the entire grind. I needed to eliminate that fella 100 times. I spent around 2 hours completing every super spicy story raid, yet the Salmonid Research had barely moved compared to the amount of actual content we had cleared. Obviously, there would be a more efficient location for farming specific Salmonid later, but the difference in progress was ridiculously nothing. Once all of the story missions were complete, we only had around 6 super spicy shard raids remaining. Those contained level 80 salmonids, although they probably will not be quite as horrible as that number made them sound. Several dens also remained, but after becoming slightly stronger, we should have been able to breeze through most of them. Then there were all 7 old buried ruins that needed to be completed yet again on super spicy. That was manageable. Just completely unnecessary. At this point, I estimated that all of the remaining super spicy cleanup would take around 7 to 10 hours. After that, we still need to continue descending through the bottomless buffet at least another 70 floors. After fully completing every super spicy story raid, I began clearing every remaining den that I felt confident enough to attempt. And honestly, that confidence got me surprisingly far. By the end of the cleanup, only 4 dens remained undefeated. The first contained the Salmonids, the second featured those tiny little fish stick pole dancing bastards. The third was filled with enormous suicide bombing Salmonids, and finally the Little Chum. The Little Chum possessed some unknown ancient power. Besides those 4 nightmares, every available den had officially been completed. Clearing the 7 remaining super spicy buried dens, and once we reached the 4th mission, the Gojaza buried ruins, the game had officially become impossible. I had completely decked out our dualies, I spent nearly every shard we owned, around 300,000 in total, and upgraded them all the way to level 71, yet they were still not powerful enough to consistently eliminate these enemies. I had absolutely no idea how we were supposed to clear this 4th ruin. You need to understand that there was practically nothing left for us to improve. We could technically continue leveling, but each new level only increased our health and attack by 2 points? Not 2 times. Just plus 2 points. That was a goddamn insult. After, of course, around 25 minutes, I somehow managed to complete the raid. But that was far too long. We still had an enormous amount of grinding remaining. I could not afford to become trapped inside one raid for 25 minutes when I had previously completed 3 entire story missions within that same amount of time. The difficulty was becoming completely ridiculous. After 9 straight hours of repetitive grinding, combined with severe sleep deprivation, my brain was no longer capable of logical thoughts. Yet the game suddenly expected me to completely lock in just to clear one stupid sub-level, and this was only the 5th buried ruin. I had not even progressed beyond floor 30 of the infinite bottomless buffet marathon mumbo-jumbo. This was becoming a serious problem. Who could have predicted that the grind would suddenly become so brutal that completing only 2 buried ruins would take more than an hour? Man, oh man! This game had slammed its foot onto the accelerator without warning. After eventually surviving that nonsense, we still had another 2 ruins remaining. Before attempting them, I completed the final 3 sampler dungeons. I seriously hoped the compasses discovered inside these ruins were the final ones, because if any more appeared after this, I might genuinely begin breaking shit. Completing all 3 trials took another 30 minutes, however they rewarded us golden skill books, each containing 3 skill points. By the time I returned to the hideout ship, I had accumulated a total of 10. I used them to completely max out gadget damage and gadget part capacity, and to absolutely nobody's surprise, health. There were no additional skill points left to discover. We were now officially as powerful and durable as the game would allow. Using our newly maxed out build, I completed the 6th buried ruin in only 20 minutes, although that mission contains level 69 Salmonids. The final rune increased them to level 71. Now that might not sound like an enormous difference, but at this stage, even a tiny increase could mean the difference between life and death. And in this case, well, it did not exactly mean death. What it meant was repeatedly smashing my head against a wall while reconsidering every decision I had made during the previous 24 hours. I could no longer comprehend the goddamn timer. The second sublevel simply did not contain enough enemies. I eliminated every single dumb little fucky-wucky the game placed in front of me. I killed them all without wasting much time dodging or searching for health. Yet every attempt ended with us still needing another 200 or 201, sometimes even 400 power X. Holy shit! There was no more efficient path to discover. There was no secret strategy waiting to suddenly click inside my brain. After an entire hour inside this miserable extravaganza, I had not reached the boss once. I hate calling challenges impossible, but grinding the same rate for an hour without even seeing its final boss. Yeah, that was beginning to feel a little impossible. So I deadass gave up. Instead, I moved on towards the remaining 70 floors of the Dungeon of Doom. And I have to be honest, going from floor 31 to floor 61 meant completing 30 floors in only 1 hour and 15 minutes. That is actually hype. Not only did I clear those 30 floors ridiculously quickly, but I probably filled only 3 or 4 raids throughout the entire stretch. I was baffled by how well everything was going, until floor 61. Floor 61 contained level 81 Salmonids. I think that the problem is not too self-explanatory. I believed that Salmonid level 80 was the maximum. I assumed that once we reached level 80 enemies, the difficulty would stop increasing, because we can simply repeat the same incredibly powerful Salmonids forever, and that would still take a very long time. Sadly, a man can only dream of receiving that kind of satisfaction. I spent 30 minutes repeatedly attempting this section, and simply could not beat 461. If this was already becoming our next major roadblock, then we had an enormous problem. We were not even remotely close to floor 100. This game was hard. Now, I eventually cleared floor 63. And by eventually, I mean after around 45 minutes. That was not a completion rate we could realistically maintain, if you catch my drift. I attempted floor 64 through floor 66 several more times, but could not even survive floor 64. So I decided to move on towards the remaining crystal hunting raids, all of which contained level 80 Salmonids. Now, I can already hear you loudly asking or thinking, But Artigaisico, you fool. If you cannot defeat level 81 Salmonids, surely level 80 enemies will cause almost the exactly same problem. Only a fool would think that. Because if you understand this game by now, you know that dodging enemy attacks and staying alive were rarely the true problem. The real deal breaker was always the timer. During the bottomless buffet, we needed to collect enough power X within 90 seconds, and that sucked absolute ass, straight butthole aroma. The crystal raids, however, did not have a timer. I could complete those things with one hand inside my pants and still clutch the victory. They still took more than an hour altogether because some required around 8,000 power X, but that's a pretty major ask. They were not hard, just long. That's what she said. With all 6 crystal raids complete, I returned to several remaining dens. Maybe we could finish those as well. And I mean, yeah, I had finally become overleveled for them. About bloody time. For once I could complete something without stressing my pubes off. I cooked every remaining mission, including the one containing those little underage fist stick pole dancers. Only one challenge remained. The godly little small fry. The battle was difficult, but during the final 3 seconds, that tiny bastard was cooked. Our duelist had defeated the almighty Small Fry. Every den was now officially complete. At this point, we had finished every story mission, every crystal mining raid, every den, and oh yes, that buried ruin. Well, I returned to the final super spicy ruin and gave it another full hour. Then I launched my Joy-Cons across the room, because this fucking bullshit fuck-ass ruin was some of the worst content I had ever experienced. During one attempt, I came so incredibly close to defeating the boss, but oh no, this was Splatoon Raiders, and apparently the only thing left to see was shivers of bloody. So yeah, I decided to take another sleepy weepy before I accidentally committed some kind of crime. When I woke up, I felt completely refreshed, and my friends, I was cooking. But what exactly was cooking? And why had I suddenly become Gordon Ramsay? Well, we were naturally becoming better at the game. I had learned the layouts of specific stages, how to dodge certain attacks, which Salmonids needed to be targeted immediately, and which ones could safely be ignored for a little while. All of that made perfect sense. But there was also something incredibly obvious. My sleep-deprived brain had completely failed to consider. I was still slightly on the levels. More importantly, I was underpowered. Remember the splatlights? Apparently I did not own their strongest damage up part, because every part was entirely RNG based. The best 5-star upgrades could technically drop at the beginning of the game or near the very end. Once I finally discovered it, the additional 20% damage became an absolute game changer. I also equipped a stronger knockback part, making it slightly easier to keep enemies away and remain alive. An even larger improvement was unlocking both vertical and uppercut damage. Vertical damage allowed the splatlights to skewer airborne enemies as well. The uppercut thingy-majig launched smaller Salmonids into the air, essentially functioning as a stun. It obviously did not work against seasoned Salmonids, but against regular enemies, it was incredibly useful. During this entire period, I did not upgrade their dualies whatsoever. There were 2 reasons for that. First, upgrading them had become ridiculously expensive. I was already spending most of our resources improving gadget parts, meaning increasing the weapon level as well was simply unaffordable. Second, these dualies were not some kind of meta-god weapon. They were a fairly standard drop that I had discovered before even reaching the post-game. The strongest weapon we could realistically obtain was a 5-star Primo Splatana. I'd already discovered several Splatanas, and even owned a 4-star version at one point. But weapons between 1 and 4 stars could only be upgraded 5 levels beyond their original level. 5-star weapons, however, could seemingly be upgraded forever. That meant a level 55 Splatana was still complete garbage compared to our upgraded dualies. I specifically needed the 5-star version, and there was one tiny problem with that. It was completely RNG based. By this point, I had spent another 2 hours descending through the bottomless buffet starting from floor 64. And man, special credits needed to go towards the splatlights, because we reached 90! Floor 90 was the game's way of officially announcing that we had entered the true endgame. The Salmonids had reached level 97. Even worse, every single floor now required us to gather 2,400 power eggs. To be fair, the final floor also required only 2,400, instead of suddenly increasing the quota to 2,700. But even with our ridiculous builds and another 2 levels added onto the dualies, it simply was not enough. Maybe the mission was technically possible, but Jesus Christ, the enemies did not die quick enough for us to meet that timer. I attempted that section for around 45 minutes. Strangely enough, I was not even angry. We had traveled from floor 64 to floor 90 in approximately 2 hours. That was more than enough progress for me to feel satisfied. The game just needed to bless us with 1 5-star Splatana. That's all I wanted. We were inside the final stretch. Only 10 floors remained. Before returning to the buffet, I wanted to settle things with the final buried ruin. With all our newly improved gadget parts, that level 71 spicy, super spicy mission mumbo jumbo, not even worth mentioning. Absolute joke now. Previously it consumed hours of my life, and now it's just not even worth discussing. But having crossed that off the list, every main story and side story mission was complete. Oh, damn it. They're also super spicy bosses. Oh my god. Well, the super spicy encounters finally made the major bosses feel like actual boss fights. They were still fairly easy, but they no longer disappeared within a couple of minutes. Their health bars were genuinely large and required us to remain focused for the entire battle. The first boss took around 6 minutes. The second, the enormous long-ass tweaking motorcycle eel, felt considerably longer. But that one also finished approximately 6 minutes. Then came the final flying nutsack. That battle felt like it lasted an eternity. In reality, it only took around 8 minutes. But damn! That chubby little ball absolutely devoured our damage output. With every super spicy boss defeated, I returned to floor 90. And I should not have. I was not going to beat it. Not yet. The mission was simply too difficult. So instead, I finally confronted the largest roadblock that had secretly been following me for the previous 30 hours. Weapon RNG. This is the part of the game where everything went downhill. I repeatedly farmed the spiralite crystal rate over and over and over, and then sometimes over again. This was some of the most repetitive nonsense imaginable, but I did not have any other option. For true 100% completion, we needed to discover all 120 weapon variants, including every special 5-star version. If I wanted to clear those final 10 bottomless buffet floors without completely losing my mind, I needed that 5-star Splatana. Could I technically complete the floors without it? Probably, yes. But why would I waste hours repeatedly attempting floor 90 when I need to farm every missing weapon anyway? Eventually, though, I knew I would beat the mission. But searching for weapons was significantly more efficient. I could work towards all 120 weapon variations while simultaneously hunting for the weapon that might completely break the remaining floors, instead of repeatedly throwing myself into floor 90. The real RNG grind officially began. There's honestly not much to say here. I occasionally traveled towards different islands to farm specific Salmonid types, but for the overwhelming majority of the time, I was simply repeating the exact same crystal rate for more than 5 hours. No, I'm not exaggerating that number. And yes, it was extremely unfun. During those 5 hours, my weapon collection increased to 95 different variations. However, I already started with 86. That meant 5 hours straight had rewarded us with only 9 new weapons. And here was the real problem. You might assume that our odds would improve as we collected more weapons, but statistically, mathematically, the exact opposite. When I started, we still needed 34 weapons capable of becoming new discoveries. Now, only 25 possible new drops remained. So unless the RNG suddenly decided to work in our favor, our progress would only continue slowing down. If I somehow maintained the exact same luck, completing the collection would require another 13 hours of repeating the same activity. My friend, 13 hours were rookie numbers. I spent way more than that. But as I said in the script right here, that's not healthy for any human being. Oh god. Oh god. Oh no, we also got the Salmonid Research. And I mean, yeah, technically these crystal rays contains plenty of enemies, but we could not eliminate them nearly as quickly as we could during the Buried Ruins or the Bottomless Buffet. So even while grinding for weapons, the research was progressing, but painfully slowly. The largest pile of salt inside the wound was that after more than 5 hours of consistent crystal farming, I still had not discovered a single goddamn 5-star Splatana. At this rate, the postgame alone could take more than 30 hours. My current estimate place was somewhere around 55 hours for full 100% completion. That was not particularly terrible in terms of total playtime. The issue was that approximately 30 to 35 of those hours consisted almost entirely of repetitive fucky wuckies. Maybe you enjoy repeating the same mission over and over and over and over and over again, who knows? We are all built differently, but me personally, I'd rather stab my brain with a rusty nail. Miyamoto's son. I do not know what is wrong with you, but bring back Reggie and Alex from Nintendo Life because I genuinely sounded like I was lying. I feel like I am engagement baiting you into liking and subscribing and thinking that I sacrifice my life for these stupid little YouTube videos, but that is exactly what I'm doing. 3 straight hours of the same shit! My weapon collection increased from 99 variants to 99 variants. The counter, not the kitchen counter, the 99 counter did not move once. Not a single time throughout those entire 3 hours. I knew the drop rate would become significantly slower as the collection filled up, but I expected to reach at least 103 weapons. Maybe 102 if the game was feeling cruel. Instead, I received nothing. And I'm sorry, but if you can even slightly understand why this was no longer fun, then I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, because I could not continue doing this. But, you know, I hated myself enough to eventually finish it. But for now, with all jokes temporarily put aside, I was done. I accepted that the mythical 5-star Splatoon was never going to appear, and spent my remaining resources maxing out our dualies instead. We owned a level 100 dualies. How could I just afford level 100 dualies? I don't know, I've been doing the same crystal raid for like 10 hours, so... With those equipped, I returned to the bottomless buffet and finally cleared floors 91 through 93. Still not easy, by the way, but I sure as hell pulled it off. From there, everything strangely began improving. Maybe I was finally getting back into an actual gameplay loop instead of a repetitive grind loop, so I actually understood how the game worked. The battles were still complete chaos, with enormous swarms of Salmonids surrounding us from every direction, but for once the timer was no longer a problem. Previously, there had not been enough enemies for us to collect the required power X before the time expired. Now, there were so many Salmonids that meeting the quota was easy, and we actually had to survive. While I was certainly no survival master, I had spent the entire game losing primarily because of the timer. This time was on our side. Like, call me Time and M. Anyway, we cooked incredibly hard, floors 97 through 99, wiped. Which left only one question. What exactly was waiting on floor 100? For the first time, it felt like an eternity. We received actual new dialogue. I was stunned. The game was finally giving me something new to script instead of forcing me to continue yapping about how the weapon grind would probably consume another 60 hours of my life. Saying this in the script right now too was also pretty generous. It took a bit more. The bot had detected a signal unlike anything we had encountered before. Maybe we were finally about to reach the bottom of the bottomless buffet. More importantly, maybe we would finally discover why Miyamoto believed adding 120 completely RNG weapon-based weapon variants was a good idea. I know it's a looter shooter, but come on, Nintendo. Shiver's instincts told her that the signal was treasure. Well, it had better contain 20 different weapon variants, ma'am. Big Man was worried that sudden wealth might change him. Nothing could ever change you, old pal. But you could change how the goddamn weapon variants. Deep Cut began discussing everything they could do with their money. Personally, I would probably purchase crack so that I could continue playing this game without sleeping. Because I desperately needed rest. Wealth definitely would not change Fry. Shiver? I was slightly less confident about her. Our final destination appears to be the Gold Club, Salmonid level 100. A beautiful number to end the descent on. But was the mission actually beatable? This fight was hard. And no, I'm not talking about myself being hard. I mean the actual difficulty was brutal. This felt like surviving a genuine war. The boss summoned enormous sandstorm tornadoes and fired powerful beams across the arena. Whenever it launched itself into the air, we needed to eliminate waves of Salmonids, gather enough power X and charge the bot's drill. The bastard even summoned weak arms. Although it's Salmonid level 100. He had finally reclaimed his original name to Strong Arms, cause oh my gosh, without Big Man Showstopper, that thing was an absolute no-go to beat. Still, after surviving everything the boss threw at us, we reached what appeared to be the final phase. He had only been using 1% of his power. Now the bastard was finished playing around. He was genuinely pissed. Probably because we had descended through 100 floors and still only discovered 99 out of the 120 weapons. And honestly, fair enough. I quickly attempted to fight another 2 times, and then I ordered a hitman on myself because I wanted to die. His enormous super mega laser piss attacks that appeared to be completely unavoidable. Go left, go right. The thing simply tracked her movements and pissed directly across her poor little inkling body. Hit the hay. Woke up this morning, booted up Splatoon. Expected to fill up my guided book, but what I got instead was, a 5-star Splatana! We might be back. More than 50 hours into the game and I'd finally discovered the goddamn Splatana swiper. It was not even a Primo weapon, meaning it was not one we even needed for the special variants we still needed for the guidebook. But I could not have cared less. We had finally obtained the meta weapon 5-star, and using all of the Spiralite gems we had collected, I upgraded to level 89. That was the maximum we could currently afford because Spiralite shards had suddenly become rare as well.
Here we get the Splatana!
The Splatana was incredibly powerful, although it was slightly less effective against the enormous hordes of enemies. It was also not fully upgraded yet, meaning our level 100 dualies still performed slightly better than the... Oh my god. So this thing was completely useless. So before returning to the boss, I continued descending through the terrifying bottomless buffet. To my complete surprise, I was now clearing them almost flawlessly. Yes, I had already completed many of these sections before, but they occasionally contained additional relics we still needed for 100% completion. That's right. Relics appeared randomly. Even more R with the N and the G. You just gotta love it. So fun having a game that you have no control over whatsoever. Awesome. Although maybe we should finally defeat the boss first. Beating it might allow us to descend beyond floor 100. Just imagine. Maybe. The deeper floors would provide improved weapon drops and make completing the remaining collection slightly more realistic. Just like the Sopranos team had predicted only moments later. I woke up that morning. I booted up Splatoon, finally received some sleep, and this foolish, oversized, slithering, flying eel did not have shit on us. I finally turned the bastard into toast. With that beautiful victory, we had officially completed all of the game's story content, assuming you still wanted to call this story content. The ending displayed all of the beautiful treasures we had discovered throughout the adventure. Although unfortunately, those were not the final treasures we still needed. Defeating the boss rewarded us with the ultimate legendary loot, worth 40 billion. That increased our total value to 83.5 billion. The game thanked us for playing. This time with 3 exclamation marks. Oh, that's so kind. But what I cared about was our new treasure hunting title. We briefly became the Splatsville Savior before immediately just skipping past it and becoming a gazillionaire. Unfortunately, the final title still required another 16.4 billion in treasure value, which sucked. That meant we needed to continue descending through the bottomless buffet, and those floors went deeper than deep. They were also significantly less convenient for weapon farming than the crystal raids. Deep Cut had gone completely overboard, almost as overboard as Miyamoto has gone with the collectibles. They had contacted everyone in Splatsville, who were apparently delighted to see Deep Cut again. The crew also thanked us. They admitted that the adventure would not have been the same without our help, which was true, very true. We also obtained the final Briny Scroll. That brought us to 65 out of the 65. At least one collectathon was finally over. I nearly maxed out our Splatana as well. It reached level 99 before I discovered that I needed the final upgrade. 5 Spiralite gems. You're nuts, game, you're nuts. I had been grinding with the dualies for so long that for a brief period it felt like our gem supply was practically infinite. But once you began fully upgrading weapons and gadget parts, those resources disappeared incredibly quickly. So it was time to go deeper, like that one GT music song. Although the real OGs still remember when they were called GT Mechanima, God, I gotta... The deeper floors. Initially went surprisingly well. We discovered several new relics and even obtained, yes, new weapon during an entire 3-hour floor grind. But hey, at least the counter moved once. At our current rate, completing the weapon collection would require another 50 to 75 hours. My previous estimate had been closer to 90, so technically not too shabby. But that's only assuming the drop rate remained consistent, which mathematically is not possible. The closer we moved towards completing the collection, the slower our progress would most likely become. Eventually, I cleared floor 163, and then attempted floors 164 and through 166 twice. Both attempts, tempos, ended in failure, so I stepped away and really just took a small break, because I was otherwise gonna do things, my friend. The grind continued from floor 164, and honestly, there was not much left to say. It was the exact same repetitive shit over and over and over again. I was simply searching for the last remaining relics. I almost wanted to stop discussing the grind entirely, because I knew it was probably becoming boring to watch, but might. The core concept behind this game was exceptionally well thought out. The problem was, and the problem is, how the post game recycled the same maps, raised the difficulty beyond anything our upgrades could reasonably match, and transformed 100% completion into a tedious endurance test designed to exclusively for people without lives like me. It felt like the developers wanted to inflate the how long to beat completion time so that the game would appear unbelievably packed with content. This just did not feel like Nintendo whatsoever. Nintendo usually has like a very hard challenge for people who want to achieve 100% completion. Games like Donkey Kong Bonanza and pretty much any Mario game might throw something brutal at you, such as Champion's Road. But those challenges tested your actual skill. You learned the levels, you improved, and after every failed run you felt like the next attempt genuinely had potential. Here, I am better off walking into the nearest casino and throwing all my money into a slot machine, because that was exactly what I was doing, and it felt like it too. I was grinding as over and over and over again. I genuinely felt like an addict. It was not good. The faster the game decided to reward me with a relic or a brand new weapon, the faster I could finish this video. Nothing, and just nothing, depended on my own skill anymore. That was intoxicating in the worst possible way. I had never experienced such a horribly tedious, sluggish machine of a 100% completion. Whoever directed this post game content, screw you. You are the devil himself. Listen to me when I tell you this. I eventually removed my headphones because I could no longer tolerate the game's sound effects. I instead began listening to Darth Vader battling Adolf Hitler. Epic rap battles of history, and that was genuinely the only thing pulling me through the grind. I am Adolf Hitler! Would you like to hear problem number 2? Oh, wonderful. I was now 3 hours balls deep into this session and had obtained uno apano. What? Yes, I'm not speaking Spanish. 1 additional entry for the guidebook. I guess that technically counted as progress. Unfortunately, I could not get past floor 197. I tried, and I tried. But I was beginning to grind something that had become a waste of time. Inside an activity that was already a waste of time. What am I doing? I was questioning so many things in my life when I was doing this stuff. But there's something that makes it even worse. I was still more than 10 billion treasure value short of the final title. To be precise, 10.3 billion, and most of the relics I discovered were only worth around 400 to 600 million. Those numbers might sound massive, but compared to our requirements, they barely created a dent. I still had approximately 10 relics remaining, but that also meant I could not simply return to the crystal raids and focus entirely on weapons. I still needed to continue descending. Oh my god! I was now more than 55 hours into this game, and just please let it end. The main story had finished around 35 hours ago. Jesus Christ! Because I could no longer complete the deeper floors consistently, I returned to the floor 90 sections to see whether they could still provide some of the missing relics. I sincerely hope they could, otherwise this already tedious grind would gain an additional layer of stressful difficulty. Yeah, the 90 sections were excellent. If we discuss the decade, the 90s were excellent, yes. When discussing the floors, get me the f*** out of here! The session initially went well. I discovered 3 new relics fairly quickly, and then the drops completely stopped. And by eventually, I mean immediately after those 3 relics. I continued farming the 90s and several other floors rangers for another hour before accepting the obvious. If these sections could no longer provide new relics, then I needed to descend even deeper, which was wonderful, because I could not consistently beat the deeper floors. After adding another hour onto the grind, I somehow progressed from floor 197 to 206. That rewarded us with another 3 relics. Okay, that's not too shabby. But floor 206... I attempted a section for another 35 minutes before realizing that I had seen enough. It was time to return to our roots and hopefully increase our weapon collection beyond the 102 variations we currently owned. And we actually did! I returned to the beautiful crystal raids and farmed them for exactly 2 hours, 10 minutes and 53 seconds, yes, right down to the second, my friend. I had also developed a new strategy. Instead of collecting enough power eggs to drill into the giant crystal, I simply cleared as many enemies and boxes as possible before immediately returning to the hideout. Then I repeated the process, over and over and over again. This method was considerably more efficient because every visible weapon we failed to physically collect would still be delivered to us after leaving the raid. At the beginning of the section, the game suddenly blessed me with an incredible streak. I discovered 4 brand new weapons, 4 completely new Primos. Why? How? It almost felt like the game had finally begun feeling sorry for me. However, it still managed to flip me the bird. Those 4 weapons all appeared within roughly the first hour. Throughout the remaining hour, 10 minutes and 53 seconds, I barely received any 4 or 5-star drops. That meant practically no chance of discovering any Primos. And whenever a 4 or 5-star weapon did appear, it was not a Primo. Sometimes it was a duplicate weapon, sometimes it was technically useful. But, I don't care about anything useful. I want to get this game over with. By the time I accepted defeat, the clock had already striked 3:30. I guess I'm gonna hit the hay. This day, I learned that sleeping is apparently some kind of cheat code, because my stupid ass tried floor 206 again, and after getting a solid 5.5 hours of sleep, my god, I was absolutely burning through these floors. Every now and then I even got a new relic. Yeah. These are completely RNG based. I went from floor 206 all the way down to floor 242. Yes, I grinded and blasted through 36 floors in only half an hour. I still needed 2 more relics, but floor 242 suddenly became another massive wall. So I went back, grinding floors 97 through 99 a couple more times, and honestly, I should have stuck with this method from the very beginning. I genuinely believe that going deeper into the bottomless buffet increased our odds. Maybe it does, but RNG is still RNG. So there I was, grinding floors 97 through 99 for another 23 minutes, which somehow gave me the final 2 relics. This brought my total value to 99.99 billion, edging me harder than Nintendo has ever done, because I've already been on the edge of wanting to. Pushing me over 100 billion would not be allowed, so, at least we're a legendary raider now. Yeah, I think I'm pretty legendary, now that I had officially become a legendary raider. I genuinely had only one thing left to do. One final objective that would conclude this entire nightmare once and for all. Grinding these crystals for another 35 hours. Oh boy, do I wish I was exaggerating. When I started farming crystals again after finishing the floor grinds, I was sitting at 107 out of 120 weapon variants. I found a new weapon inside the bottomless buffet, the Primo Real Splatana. I don't remember much of this day. I just realized I completely forgot to script it. I think I was so unbelievably tired. I've never sacrificed this much sleep for anything else in my entire life. But hey, anything for content, right? I went from 107 weapons to 113 that day, and after looking back through the footage, I discovered that I had simply replayed the exact same recycled garbage for another 9 hours. Easily the least eventful day of my entire life. July 28th, July. What a horrible month. I had already spent over 70 hours inside this game and had probably been farming the same crystal for more than 35 hours. The good news was that within the first 10 minutes of playing again, I reduced the remaining grind to only 6 weapons. Weapon number 114 was the Primo palm umbrella. This perfectly demonstrated that the entire grind could theoretically just be completed in 5 hours. Or 100, depending on your luck. And because nobody online had mentioned this grind yet, probably because no sane human would be willingly putting themselves through this shit, I had now no way of knowing whether my progress was incredibly fast or painfully slow. Things naturally started slowing down again, but surprisingly 2 hours later I obtained a Primo oil drum pow slosher. If the drops continued at this rate, I could theoretically finish everything within another 10 hours. That would be insanely quick considering how long this had already felt. Although repeatedly completing the same 3-minute and 30-second raid for 30 hours probably explains why it felt like an eternity. Only about 10, maybe 17 minutes later, your boy obtains the Primo toy horn blaster. Bro, I was blasting all over this goddamn toy horn blaster. Holy shit! In only 2 hours. During the final stretch of 7 weapons, I had already reduced the remaining collection to only 4. Please. Let July 28th be the day my soul was finally released and I can actually do something with my life again. I cannot explain how badly I wanted to start recording the script and editing this video. I have never been so excited to begin the editing process in my entire life. For a weapon or left or for. And I should have never allowed myself to be this excited. I had seen people discussing this on Reddit, and it appeared that the final 4 weapons I needed were all weapons I had previously found once or twice with a 5-star rarity, but never a Primo variant. Whether I had actually found their 4-star versions, don't know because I always scrapped them immediately. One weapon in particular, the Dutch Roller, was something I had possibly never found before. Maybe once a 4-star, but never a 5. At this point, I had played for 75 hours across only 5 days. 75 hours across 5 days is a lot of time, and my brain felt so fried that I genuinely seemed like it had fallen out of my skull. I cannot properly explain the feeling. I was trapped inside an endless loop. My life had become Groundhog Day. Every day, I woke up, completed the exact same raid, opened the exact same crystals, and received the exact same useless 1-star and 2-star weapons. Sometimes they even ching plong pling plong. After another 4 hours of searching for these seemingly unobtainable weapons, I completely collapsed. I bursted into tears and generally just started losing my mind. I had to force myself out of this goddamn room. I'd already spent more time playing Splatoon Raiders than I had spent completing the entirety of Neon White. That's like the most insane challenge I've ever done. What the hell, it can get worse than Neon White? Splatoon Raiders had pushed me towards a borderline insanity that is not even an exaggerated joke for a video anymore. It was like un-okay. This game's for 100% completion requirements are some of the most unhealthy RNG bullshit I have ever experienced. Stay away. So after 6 or 7 months not doing so, I took a shower, went for a walk, and returned feeling mildly refreshed. My eyes were now hurting even more than my headache, but what was I supposed to do? Play a game wearing a blindfold? After grinding for another 3 hours, I even tried switching to a different crystal location, but I had practically stopped finding Primos altogether. Whenever a gold or a 5-star appeared, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh, it's not even a swinger or a roller, so who even cares? At midnight, officially making it July 29th, I chugged an energy drink despite no longer possessing a functioning brain and decided to defeat the big legendary golden boss another 4 times because yes, the Salmonid Research was somehow still not finished either. Just like the other bosses, I needed to defeat this guy like 5 times, 5 guys. I managed to finish this remaining kills in around 30 minutes, maybe slightly longer, but honestly, I just wanted everything to be over. Please, for the love of God, let me beat this game. Around 6 hours earlier, a small creature known as the Mailman had arrived, carrying an absolutely gigantic package. Apparently, the Splatoon Raiders 3-pack, specifically Big Man, comes inside one chunky box. So I had paid 67 euros in total, because alongside the Raiders 3-pack, I also needed to buy a green Inkling amiibo for one specific outfit. It did not come from a Raiders amiibo with this outfit, I had to buy just a random Splatoon amiibo. And of course I did so. So after scanning all 4 of these genuinely great looking statues, I still somehow needed 4 weapons that I may or may not will ever receive in my life. So I asked Reddit whether anybody had obtained the final 4 weapons I needed. The Primo Inner Tube Roller, the Primo Bamboo Stringer, the Primo Racket Stringer were all confirmed by other players. What worried me slightly is there was nobody that had the Primo Duct Roller. Eventually someone did tell me he got it, but still, not a lot of people got it. So at least I knew it was officially obtainable. But I had now spent around 80 hours inside the game, and I was becoming slightly sick of it, if you didn't mention it yet, if you didn't like... I do have to give 1 point to my favorite company, RNG Tendo, for allowing you to scan amiibo without removing them from the packaging. I did not send them back, because they're pretty nice looking on my shelf. Because that's one chunky box, man! Damn! Should not get hooked on this stuff. For the previous 6 or 7 hours, I had received no new weapons and had barely even seen the 1 or 2 star or 3 star versions of the weapons I needed. Another wonderful thing was blocking me from the 100% completion was Nintendo Switch Online. Woo! I love my Nintendo Switch, but besides playing Mario Maker once or twice before, YouTube consumed my entire existence. I had barely touched online multiplayer since 2020, mostly because Nintendo's online service is complete ass. But hey, they had now successfully extracted around 130 euros from me purely for this video. And we're talking money. Imagine my sanity! Pretty good game so far. For the online requirements, I first had to help somebody complete a raid, which unlocked an outfit. Then I needed to request help completing a raid, which unlocked another outfit. And then finally I had to create or join a multiplayer room and clear 1 dungeon. That required another human being. Now if you have been watching this channel for a while, you already know that I have no friends. So instead, I moved on to the arcade machines. I needed to earn an A rank or higher in every little arcade game. And they were generally fun and refreshing. After everything I had been doing, I could deal with multiplayer dungeons later. I would just ask somebody I knew. I had attempted the same strategy during Call of Duty. Well, that unfolded greatly, didn't it? But the Nintendo community is pretty sweet. And the Splatoon community is the cherry on top. Community-wise and gameplay-wise, this game is awesome. The requirements for 100% completion should simply have been based on skill instead of luck. But surely, the arcade games finally test my skill, right? Wrong. Why should I even be surprised anymore? Half of these games were also RNG-based. Go fuck yourself. In the mining game, you have 40 seconds to earn an A rank, which requires 6,000 points. Surpassing 2,000 already felt like an achievement itself. I had to reach 6,000. Now yes, the route changes every time, but I cannot blame all of that on RNG. Some of it was probably caused by my reflexes no longer functioning after staring at a screen for 15 hours every day. I had been doing that consistently for almost 6 days. Thursday, July 30th. Was now only 22 hours and 43 minutes away. That meant I had spent practically an entire week doing nothing except grinding Splatoon Raiders. It was beginning to just slightly annoy me, in case I had not already made that clear. Now, the real RNG problem came in from the blue crystals. Each blue crystal adds 1 extra second to the timer. During some attempts, you receive 10 of them practically back to back, gaining 10 seconds within only a couple of seconds and almost creating infinite time. But during some other attempts, you reach your final 8 seconds and then the game effectively just flips you the bird. No game had ever pissed me off this consistently before. It was honestly starting to become impressive. If Miyamoto personally loved you, the game might even spawn a powder egg. That allowed you to smash straight through rocks for around 5 seconds while also granting another 3 seconds of time. So you received extra time, temporary invisibility, and the ability to destroy everything in your path. But once again, it either appeared or it did not. In other words, R with the N with the G, and it fucking sucked. So I gave up on the arcade games. At this point, I was honestly better off grinding for the final 4 weapons while exhausted and then attempting something that was RNG based while also requiring the slightest amount of skill. Unlike whatever the hell I had already been doing for probably close to or beyond 50 hours, I had genuinely lost count. I had lost everything. So I played some more and some more and some more, and I mean, how badly could another 3.5 hours possibly hurt? Oh, you don't want to know how much it hurt. The numbers, Mason, of duplicates I received was complete bullshit. The number of Primo rollers I found that I already owned was somehow even bigger bullshit, and when the clock nearly reached 5 a.m., I finally obtained my 5th Primo roller. Yeah. But not too much rest for the best, because only 8 hours later we hopped straight back into the grind. I actually took 8 hours of sleep. I am also very surprised. That's actually not true. It consisted out of 6 hours of surprisingly decent sleep, and then another 2 hours spent slowly drinking coffee. Coffee had basically been keeping me alive throughout this entire nightmare. I will spare you the full story, or song, or whatever you want to call this endless complaining about the game. I was, of course, grinding Little Inlet. Why am I even still talking about this? Everybody's favorite map. And a map I simply could not get enough of. I loved it so much. I woke up every day going straight back to it. In the meantime, every 30 minutes, I called for help over at Bagel Beach. This was supposedly the hardest crystal raid. It was not the biggest or necessarily the most efficient, but it came extremely efficient when completed with 2 other people. That's what they are, right? Sadly, there were 2 problems. Problem number 1, I could only call for help once every 30 minutes. I could continuously go out and help other players, but 9 out of 10 times I ended up inside a lobby with a 4-year-old who genuinely could not complete the raid because he doesn't know how the game works. The 5 lives were shared between the entire team, so if little Timmy died 5 times, everybody lost. Normally losing a raid was not the end of the road, but when you lose during a multiplayer game, you receive nothing. That meant that if I found one of the final 4 weapon drops online and the team lost, the weapon would disappear. Did that happen? Of course not. I am still responsible, but I still did some online grinding. After investing more than 85 hours into this stupid game, I found the Primo inner tube roller, and this bad boy made me twice as excited because even the regular inner tube roller was something I had barely encountered before. I only needed 3 extremely lucky strikes, but at least I had finally made some progress again after what felt like an eternity. Especially when you include the previous day's grind, which had me given nothing for God knows how long. Ooh, did indeed not know anything about how long that previous drought had lasted. But I did know exactly how long it took to find my next weapon. Except, there was no next weapon. During the following 6-hour grind, I did not find a single duct roller, bamboo stringer, at 4 or 5 star. And I'm not only talking about the Primo versions, I mean I did not find a single decent version whatsoever. I encountered a 1-0 and a 2-0. That was about it. I did find around 6 or 8 4-star racket stringers, but they could suck on that Primo, El Primo, Brastarso. The 6-hour grind did at least reward me with 3 Spiralite gems, finally allowing me to complete the entire Salmonid Research collection. I had finished something meaningful, at least. But this entire day had only given me 1 new weapon. It had been the slowest and honestly the most tedious day of the grind so far. I am surprised I haven't pulled the trigger, so let us hope this day will not be another disappointing one. Let July 30th shine. Please let me finish this game once and for all. Unfortunately, the day started just as weakly as every other. I did finally unlock the Over Here workwear outfit for completing an online game inside a multiplayer room, because entering the keyword Splatoon displayed a bunch of available lobbies. And somehow, I became the leader of one. I started the match with 1 player and he immediately left. So I just continued farming here alone for a bit. Naturally, I received absolutely nothing useful besides finally unlocking that outfit. Only 1 outfit remained. But in case it was not already painfully obvious, I wanted to obtain my bloody weapons first. Okay, I also did not script this bit. Somewhere along the lines, I found a couple of 5-star weapons, and I also found 1 4-star bamboo stringer for the first time. And I had to confirm that it's least obtainable, but we already knew that. Okay. Cool. Nice. Okay, and now I want to tell you guys something I have not said before in the video, but I was pretty exhausted. Normally I can convince myself, yeah, I'll push through, I'll improve, I'll eventually beat it. But this time I was not overcoming a difficult challenge, I was gambling. And after finding and grinding and gooning for more than 10 hours without finding any of the final 3 weapons, the possibility that this could continue forever was genuinely beginning to scare me. I had been hunting days for this bad boy. We had even started finding regular bamboo stringers somewhat consistently, but suddenly, this one had fish ribs attached to it. Yes, people, after more than 10 completely dry hours, we had finally found a brandanio de la el primo, the primo bamboo stringer, ito realo. It is real! 2 weapons remained. With my luck, that would be another 20 hours. But for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, my brain finally received a tiny hit of dopamine. With a massive Joker smile plastered on my face, I continued grinding. Maybe I could finish everything before the almighty midnight. Maybe I could finally free myself from this hellscape. And oh boy, you're not gonna believe it. Not even close, baby. Another 8 hours passed with maybe 1 hour of downtime because, you know, I still had to brush my teeth and perform basic human maintenance. The other 7 hours were spent entirely inside the game, and they gave me a whole lot of nothing. The damned racket stringer had previously appeared over and over and over again at 4 stars, but never with that beautiful El Primo attached to it. Now, it had apparently stopped existing entirely. Maybe I saw 1 or 2 1-star versions. Besides that, I could suck a cock. The Primo Duck Roller was the same story as always. I encountered maybe 25 or 30 1-star and 3-star Duck Rollers, and that was the full extent of my extravaganza. It had now been more than a week since I first started playing this game, and I had accumulated at least 115 hours of playtime. To put that into perspective, a standard full-time work week is somewhere around 36 to 42 hours. My ass had played more than double of that. I do not even dare to tell me that this was not work, because if we remove the enjoyable 30 minutes of the side content and the main story, that's still left around 85 hours spent raw dogging the exact same map over and over. I had averaged approximately 14 hours and 45 minutes of Splatoon Raiders every single day. I woke up, I sat down, I played the game, ate while playing the game, showered if I was lucky, maybe squeezed in one quick goon, and ho-ho! The cycle repeated. I was trapped inside the Matrix. There was no escape unless Miyamoto personally allowed it, so I started thinking, do you all remember this guy? Because I do.
What's good, my...
The way he begins this video is slightly questionable, but that is not what we are here to investigate. He explains that the Monkey Squad is apparently on top inside a little niche game I have never played before, but personally I have clocked in some hours on. It's called Fortnite. You build things, you shoot people. It's fairly underrated, but that is a story for another time. According to him, the Monkey Squad was on top, and they had also apparently beamed the opposing fellas. The source remained unknown. He then mentions somebody with an absolutely unhinged username before ending the sentence with
Fortnite Burger Gang.
Now, okay, this got me thinking, right? I was not entirely sure what these Fortnite burgers were up to, but it clearly had something to do with the Monkey Squad. Yes, the monkeys do not normally eat burgers. Unless... No, it could not be Reggie? Were you secretly developing this game called Splatoon Raiders? No, wait. Did that mean Reggie was part of the Fortnite Burger Gang? Fortnite is available on Nintendo Switch. It is also available on Nintendo Switch 2. That makes 3 Fortnites. PS5, PS4... God, oh! It's all making sense now. Do you also know what is available on the Nintendo Switch 2? Okay. That is right. Pragmata, a game that a human being can presumably enjoy. Unlike this miserable piece of orange! On August 3rd, I was editing this video and recording the remaining script, just as I had been doing throughout August 1st and August 2nd. But every now and then I returned to the game and gambled for a little while. Maybe the final Primos would finally dare to somehow show themselves. Then after killing either the first Salmonid or maybe the 5th, the 5-star racket stringer, El Primo edition. We all know that my odds are still as slim as ever to get that Primo Duck Roller, and I've already got like 10 4-star Primo Duck Rollers. Without the Primo. Please, Brawl Stars. Now, instead of immediately returning to the weapon casino, I still had one objective left that was half RNG and half skill. The arcade machines. As I've been explaining throughout this entire video, I really just wanted to stop playing this game. This game was hurting my soul, writing the script was hurting my soul, editing the footage was hurting my soul, everything hurts, and I desperately wanted to move on with something new. This project had now consumed more than 200 hours of my life. I was begging for a different game to play once this video was finally uploaded. You, my friend, listening to my beautiful voice right now, can confirm that I am currently having an incredible time not playing this game. Anyway, there were 4 arcade games and 4 A ranks required to unlock the final outfit. I started with hopping. After playing it for around an hour and a half, I needed to reach 5,500 points. My highest score was 4,700. At this point, you can just watch the gameplay. I was no longer emotionally capable of thoroughly explaining every stupid arcade machine game, because this was preparing on draining another 10 hours of my life. After roughly 2 hours, I earned my first A rank in the game I initially expected to be the hardest, but it turned out to be pretty easy. It's landing. You have to traverse a series of areas using an awkward little shuttle. It's just the Bud Buddy, but I did not want to start developing negative feelings toward that beautiful creature. You simply had to guide it from point A to point B. I originally believed I needed to collect every piece of spiralites scattered throughout the stages, but after completing all 10 stages and grabbing only the occasional coin, I finished with 9,600 points. And as far as I could tell you, 9,000 was already enough for an 8 rank, so hey, surprisingly painless. Afterward, I kept switching between the hopping and mining games every 30 minutes, so I would not begin smashing my desk. That was a lie, I absolutely still smashed my desk, just not continuously. At the very least, switching between the two gave me a tiny amount of variety. After around 6 total hours spent on the arcade machines, I finally reached 6,175 points in mining and secured that beautiful A rank. Hopping was generally considered and personally confirmed to be the hardest arcade game there was. But I eventually started improving. As you know, this is not RNG based, and I was just getting better at it. And at the end of the day, I'm already a master at juggling balls. I once juggled 3 completely different balls belonging to 3 completely different guys. So you know I was naturally built for this. Wait, no, I think that's the wrong game. After all the attempts, switching and suffering combined, hopping took me approximately another 2.5 hours. But eventually, I finally earned the A rank. That left only one arcade game. Juggling. Okay, now juggling is just way easier with 2 people. Unfortunately, I was recording all of this around 3 a.m. in the morning. If that's even morning. Is that the morning? I don't know. Anyway, everyone was fast asleep, so I could not really contact anybody. But for me, the grind never stops. Maybe the night leading into August 4th would finally be the night I completed the game and obtained the final weapon. Of course it was not. Technically, I probably could have forced it to happen, but the following day I still needed to record this section and finish the editing. The whole goddamn video, it's a lot of goddamn work. I was getting extremely late. It was 4, 5, all the AMs ticking by, and I began experiencing something that almost never happens to me. Micro-sleeps. I was sitting there briefly, falling asleep without even realizing it, then slapping myself across the face to remain conscious. My efficiency had completely collapsed. At that point, not even G Fuel was gonna save me. Another hour would barely accomplish anything. So going to sleep was the most responsible decision. I finally made one in my life. So, throughout August 4th, I had pretty much finished the entire bloody video. I still had a couple of tiny audio edits left, blah blah blah, boring creator stuff about wanting to make a good video and not disappoint the people watching. But while I was doing all of that, I also squeezed in another couple of hours of weapon grinding, and more importantly, my absolute goat of a dad finally helped me with the juggling. We needed at least 7,500 points for the A rank. Together, we absolutely demolished that requirement with 8,800, an A rank secured. And somehow, my dad was actually better at the game than I was. It's a little fun fact for you. August 5th, you guys. I started strong with a 9 a.m. grind and continued until 8 p.m. That is an 11-hour window. Take away roughly 2 hours for eating and attempting to mentally recover from the bullshit I was still putting myself through, and that leaves another 9 hours of actual playtime. 9 hours. And I still did not get one goddamn Primo duck roller. I had even reached the Spiralite shard cap, 9.9 million. The game could literally no longer give me more of the resources I had been farming alongside these weapons. The only thing still keeping me going was seeing how much you guys genuinely appreciated the amount of effort going into these videos. So thank you. Seriously. I genuinely could not keep doing this shit without you guys. I mean that. Okay, but that's enough sobbing. That's enough of that. That's not what you're here for. I think you also want to dip. There's only one more thing that's left to be done. I waited until the clock struck midnight, August 6th, and at approximately 2 a.m. in the morning, I was officially done with splagooning on the Raiders, because the Primo Duct Roller finally rolled into my hands, and I did not even react. There was no screaming, no jumping around, there was nothing. I just sat there and felt an unbelievable amount of stress and pain slowly leave my body. My feet and legs hurt from barely moving for days. My head and eyes hurt from staring at a screen constantly and barely going outside. Just not at all, honestly. And after clocking 145 hours inside this stupid, lucky, gambling-ass game, it was official. There was nothing Nintendo could do anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to prove the 100% to ya. All 120 weapon variants had been collected. Big Man rewarded me with 3 Spearlight gems, which is honestly laughable considering I had already grinded this game so hard that I owned 249 of the bloody things before receiving this quote-unquote blessing. The Switch does not even have a proper achievement system, so I wanted to show everything myself, because your watch time, especially on a video like this, is generally worth more to me than a vault filled with gold. Every relic obtained, every Briny Scroll obtained. The entire bloody Salmonid Research collection, the thing I had originally expected to be the biggest roadblock of the video, completed. And it also turned out I was horribly wrong about that one. All 15 gadgets, I had those in about, 15 minutes. God damn it, why is this even on the list? And every single stupid, miserable, godforsaken Primo weapon variation. Done. This grind was an insult to video game completionists. Splatoon Raiders took me twice as long. Honestly, I got no comparison. This is some bullshit numbers. As you can tell from my beautiful blue attire, I did indeed spend actual human currency on those plastic toys last week, so alongside earning an A rank in every arcade game, every single outfit had also been obtained. I have never grinded this many hours for a goddamn paint roller. I could have walked into a Praxis and bought one for €4. But I do not want to end everything on bad terms, so let me be honest with you here. The main story was genuinely great, the side content was great too, as far as I can remember any of it. The post game consumed around 110 hours of my life, so I had genuinely forgotten this game even had a story until I started editing the damn video. And weirdly enough, editing this thing was some of the most fun I've had in editing in ages. I'm not talking about the game itself, I'm talking about just making the video. This might genuinely be one of my favorite videos I've ever edited. Maybe even the most fun I've had putting one together, scripting, everything else. But the game itself sucked donkey dick. But it's finally over. I really have nothing left to say besides thank you. Thank you guys so much for the continuous support, and especially to the people who even show up for my crappier 100% videos, because I've made some crappy ones. Thank you guys, just I love you guys. Alright, that's it. That's 100% Apparently, and very fucking surprisingly, I also needed every single gadget part. Yeah, I thought developing all 15 gadgets was enough. Nope, not even close, baby. Every individual little piece of shit attached to them little other pieces of shits had its own completion percentage. Oh yes, yeah, I love this game! Thankfully, I had already completed all the tactical tank parts and of course the splat lights, but everything else, oh, fuck! It took me 32 minutes just to develop every gadget part that could be developed normally. Just, there's a shitload of clicking. Thankfully, I had enough. Oh, what a surprise. I had enough resources for it. But there were still, not even plenty, no, a shit ton of parts that needed to be obtained through, you guessed it, oh, more grinding, the same recycled garbage over and over again. I love the innovation this game has, man. Now, the legendary loot relic supposedly made gadget parts substantially easier to find. And to be fair, it absolutely worked, okay? I'll give the game that. This grind was already significantly more reasonable. If this was the same as the weapon grind, I would have probably been done in like 80 hours total, which I would have still complained about, I know myself, but that would have been okay compared to what the hell I still gotta do now. because besides the little bit of main story stuff, I have never used anything else but the tactical tank and the splat lights. So I got all the splat lights thingies, but I've never used anything else besides the tactical tank. And after spending something like the previous 80 hours exclusively using the tactical tank, switching away from it generally made me feel handicapped. So what I originally thought would be a final cleanup session and just whatever, I'll just do it. This might turn into another like 2-day grind. I highly doubt it could possibly take longer than that though. Right? I do not even know where to begin anymore. Why do I even need to begin anymore? I genuinely thought it was all over, but no. Another day, another grind, another goddamn nothing. August bloody 6th, and instead of finishing the edit, I was still playing this hunk of junk. Farming gadget parts was basically the exact same thing as farming weapons. The only difference was that it was slightly easier and slightly more trustworthy thanks to the legendary loot relic. During my first run, I spent more than 6 hours grinding and actually made some decent progress. Unfortunately, during the second run, I noticed something horrible. Everything started to slow down. The 5-star gadget parts were suddenly dropping just as rarely, if not even less frequently, than the bloody 5-star weapons, and honestly, that sucked dick. There's basically nothing left to say about this. Another entire day spent inside this never-ending cycle. Man, oh man, I grinded for another 8 hours straight! And I mean, straight as an arrow, begging whatever higher power was listening to please let this nightmare end tonight. I desperately needed one proper night of sleep. And I desperately needed to finish the video. This project was passing 200 hours. I had genuinely stopped counting at this point. 8 hours into the grind, it was 3 a.m. And I just got interrupted with the software update. Could it be? Was Nintendo finally going to make the RNG slightly more reasonable? Was Miyamoto finally showing mercy? Well, let us install it. Except, wait. The game was still showing version 1.1.0. Oh, apparently I just needed to restart the software. So I installed the update in approximately 1 millisecond thanks to my super epic fiber internet and booted the game back up. Version 1.1.1. Alright, patch notes. Let's have a look-see. What have we got? When releasing a tanks limiter, you can now release it without holding down the A button. Okay, well that's great for the game itself. Fixed an issue where elements such as a showstopper gauge were not hiding correctly after a period of inactivity. Oh, that's awesome. Fixed an issue where emergency damage up was not being applied correctly to explosion damage for the splashes. I don't give a shit. Fixed an issue where you occasionally could not move after using a splat shit immediately after performing a squid roll from a wall. Where the fuck's my revolver? Does that fuck shit matter to me? To us? To any final microscopic son of a bitch on this planet? No, it does not. I actually slept today. And then I grinded from around 1 p.m. until 8 p.m. with dinner. I ate. That belly was feasted. Did I finish the game today? Well, not yet. I mean, come on. I only had something like 175 hours into the game. If I would finish a game after 175 hours, while the story ended after 35... that would be far too generous now, would it? But there was finally some good news. The entire power tank was done. And because I had also been running several speed tank gadgets at the same time, the blast boot and the dash bomb were finished too. The Cyborg Teen Titans Go Booyarang still needed a whopping 12 parts. And then the jump bomb, which I had also equipped for quite a while, only needed 1 measly part. And then the flywire still needed another 12, so yeah. So, plenty of suffering left. But I got some more good news! I did not need another 25 completely ridiculous legendary parts. Realistically, I probably only needed around 6 of the really rare ones. Maybe that meant an hour per part. Maybe for once in my miserable existence, Lady Luck would finally decide to sit beside me. Could I possibly finish before we entered August 8th? Please, I am done with this game, Epic Games. I am done with this game. Alright, well, we already entered midnight, August 8th, around 12:30. But I needed 1. Final gadget part. 1. Like Uno. That card game you play with your fucking family if you got one. Well, I don't give a shit. Because I did get the final gadget part, bitch, and I lost the rate. Yeah. I lost the fucking rate. The final item I needed became the first item during this entire gadget grind that I lost a rate while holding an item I had not already obtained. And because losing the rate means you keep absolutely nothing, it did not count. So instead of crying like a little baby, as I had already done enough throughout the previous 145 hours or so, I simply had to give the game another 10 minutes. And then, it happened. It happened. It was over. Actually over. Finally done. I had claimed that stupid second badge inside Big Man's hordes. Every single gadget part was collected. Every requirement was completed. And instead of finishing this game after 145 hours, like I originally believed, we had officially 100% completed Splatoon Raiders after 180 hours. 180, 100 with the 8 and a 0. I'm begging you that you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, because I did enjoy making it, that's not a lie. The story was awesome, the side content to some extent, and then the endless gambling mechanic, the RNG, the repeated raids, the endless waiting for one microscopic drop that doesn't even value or add anything to my life. Well, I did it anyway. This is now my most played game on my Nintendo Switch. Holy shit. And the only reason it got anywhere close was because of a stupid gambling mechanic.